We are live. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. We are in the pre-show for our SY0-601. Today's Security Plus, everybody. We're doing Security Plus. We're trying to do Security Plus, trying to get things set up. It is the pre-show. We start in about 9 minutes. I don't even have my headphones on yet, so I'm not even sure if you're hearing me. Hey, chat room. Hello, everyone. Let me see if I can turn you around there. Make sure you're not in my shot. You are not. Barely not. Barely still works, though. Hi, everybody. There is not a poll in the chat. There is, I've seen those fancy YouTubers with their polls in the chat, and I am not one of those yet. So maybe someday we'll get to that point. That'd be easy, wouldn't it? We could just do it in the chat. We wouldn't have to do Socrative. I don't know how, that would be pretty awesome, actually. It'll get to me eventually. We'll make it happen. Hello, Connecticut. Saw some other folks from earlier from Montreal. We have South Africa. That was my very bad French accent. Montreal is here. Ontario is here. A lot of Canadians checking in. There's some of the Floridians. Hello, Floridians. Look at this mess. I've just got cable. It's not really a mess. It's just, if there's two cables, they will find a way to get together and wrap themselves up and create a problem. The Q&A, we'll talk about how the Q&A works in a bit. Don't worry, you won't be left out. You will not. I haven't even started the Q&A. You can look over my shoulder as I started. Why am I so behind today? What's going on? It's the last one of the month, although we got 2 live streams next week, so it's not like we're missing anything. There we go. Now I can hear myself. I can hear what you hear, which is really the most important part. Let's check some cameras. Cameras look good. What else? What else? We'll get some things going here. When are the new A+ courses being released? Well, there are no announcements of any new A+ exams. So until then, we'll talk about A+ next week. But CompTIA has not announced any new A+ exams. So the current A+ exams are the latest. They are the newest. Live streams can be found on professormesser.com/live. No, professormesser.com/calendar. The calendar link at the top of the page is the best place to go to know when all the live streams are going to be. Now, it is warm in here. The temperature outside, this does not have temperature on it anymore. It used to. Used to know what the temperature was. Right now, outside, we're at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. High today, 83. So it's going to be a warm day. Let's make it cooler in here, which was the point of all of that. All right, this is the studio. Let's make the studio cooler. Okay, we got a lot going on today. It's all Security Plus today, all the questions I have. Cameras look good. I'm looking at these across the way. These 4 boxes here, the cameras that you will eventually see. And obviously, you've got the program side. That's what you're seeing. And then the preview side is there. That's what's going to be up next. We'll figure out what that is. We got about 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes before we get started. So we'll get going with that. Let's get Socrative up and running. Let's do a quiz. Let's do a Security Plus quiz in 2022. The one for February 23rd will work. It's teacher paced, doesn't require a name. And let's start it up. And now, if you go to professormesser.com/QA, you'll see a question waiting for you. We'll talk more about the questions and the answers and all that stuff in just a bit. This will be archived. It'll be available immediately afterwards on YouTube. It's just automatically added as soon as we stop the stream. And all of my study groups are archived going back, I don't know, to all of them. They're all on YouTube. You can go back years. I think I started A+ study groups like 7 years ago. So you can go back when I was just a baby. Like, hi, welcome to the Security Plus study group. That was me. And I had a pacifier, and it was remarkable. And now I'm all grown up doing study groups. But they're all on YouTube. You can go find them. There's also categories on my website. If you go to the right sidebar. There's a selection for categories, and all the categories are under that as well, but not, what a mess. What did I just do? But not the older ones are not on my site. So you won't find a category for like the 901 or the 801, those things. So the room name in Socrative is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. I can't wait till get to that. I do categorize a lot of things. I am that kind of person. I like everything to be in a particular configuration so I can find things later. And it does save you. As you can imagine, when you're building a course like this, there's so many different moving parts. There's a video file. There's video that you create that's raw. Then you have to edit the video. Then you have to get closed captioning and add that to the video. Then you have to have, all of the graphics and the little tiny graphic and the big graphic and the 3D graphic and the, so is this live? That's a really good question. Is this live? How do we answer that though? Because if you ask, is it live, and somebody says, yes, it is, I don't have a way to hold up like a picture of a newspaper or anything. You're just going to have to take it from me. That's 11:56 Eastern, 11:57 Eastern on Wednesday, February the 23rd. And it should have a little live icon at the top of your screen. How much did this setup cost? Not as much as you might think, but enough that it makes me cry sometimes. So it's a balancing act, really, between functionality and sanity. That's what this is. This is my boat. I just put money into the boat, and we hope that we get something out of it. You never get anything out of a boat. You always get entertainment. So this is entertainment. This is fun. This is just something to do. We'll figure it out. We got a lot going on. Now, if you wanted to see what these things are, you can go to professormesser.com/studio. And there's a breakdown. This is the video switcher I'm using. This is the audio mixer I'm using. This is the monitor I have. This is, well, all those things. All of that. Well, this boat is floating, so we have not hit an iceberg yet. I say yet. There's always that thing. If anybody who is a business owner, anybody who's an entrepreneur, they know that there's always that, hey, things are going pretty well. When is this going to change? When is this going to hit the iceberg? I don't expect that to be an issue. I think we're doing just fine. It's a lot of fun. These live streams are always good. We got a minute and a half ready to go. I should probably check things. We are recording. You can see my Cylons are going down here. That's a video recording. Cameras look good. Not getting any flashing. Let's quickly do a cut. This is what you will see because, that's it's not the back of my head the whole time. And look, I see myself there. We don't need to have a live stream of me. I see me. I will be swapping out this monitor hopefully before the live streams in this next week. It's this tiny little streaming device. I plan on having a monitor the same size next to it. We're just swapping it out. We'll figure out the details. We will make it happen. The quiz for today, professormesser.com/QA, gets you there. There's a quiz waiting for you. It's one on my screen right now. I know you can probably see it over my shoulder. 30 seconds to go. We'll figure it out. We'll figure this out. I have all questions today from the Security Plus, so we'll figure out. I should probably get that ready. We'll make that live there. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to play. There we go. I think we're in pretty good shape. Jay in the chat room, passed your Security Plus in 2020 after studying for 9 months. It can be done, people. That 9-month schedule, that's a lot like mine. It takes me a while to get things going. Let's get Keynote running right here. It says it's starting. Yes, it is. Green play button looks great. I think we're ready to do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2022 Professor Messer SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. This is our monthly study group where I take questions from the CompTIA exam objectives I put them on the internet and we see what happens. We try to do one of these every month for each of the courses that I have on my site. You can always go to professormesser.com/calendar for the latest information. That way you can attend one of these live. And if you do attend live, you have the option of answering and joining along with our questions and answers. If you are watching this live right now, you can pop open a browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. And that will get you to the question that is waiting for you right now. If you have a mobile device and you would like to use an app, because of course there should be a mobile device with an app, you should download the Socrative Student app. There's a Socrative Teacher app. That's the one for me. Socrative Student app is the one for you. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser. And if you do all of that and everything seems to be in the right place, then there will be a question waiting for you. That question asks, a security administrator would like to monitor an application for invalid JSON strings. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be an SWG, an IPS, an IPsec, an MDM, or an SAE? These are all real things, and you may recognize this question as being one from last month. The first question of every study group is a rewind question, where we try to determine what the right answer will be based on questions we gave you last month. So let's see if you remember what this one happens to be. We will come back to this question in just a moment. And of course, as always, please no answers in the chat room and no hints in the chat room. We'll come back to that question in just a moment. We've got plenty to go through today, and thanks to you, we're able to do these live streams. Of course, when we're not doing one of these live streams, you can find all of our training videos available on professormesser.com/YouTube. And you can, of course, check in once a week. We have a Security Plus Pop Quiz question of the week that is posted on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter and on Instagram. If you like your question with a little bit of a nice Instagram picture to go along with it, you can do that too at professormesser.com/Instagram. All of the questions we'll talk about today will be for the SY0-601. This is the current version of the Security Plus exam. It was introduced on November the 12th of 2020, and its estimated retirement will probably be in the May timeframe of 2024 plus or minus. We'll have to see how things go once we get closer to that date. The whole point today, of course, is that you will be able to study, and you've got plenty of time before this exam is ever even close to being retired. You're in the right place if you're studying for Security Plus. We've got one exam to pass the Security Plus exam, and you're Security Plus certified. That's it. There's no multiple exams. It's a single exam that's 90 minutes long. You could get a maximum of 90 questions. There could be fewer than 90 questions, but they will maximize that up to 90. You won't get more than 90. The passing score on a scale from 100 to 900 is a score of 750. So there is no percentage associated with this. Each question is worth a different number of points, so it's impossible to calculate a percentage. You just have to get 750 points. However that happens is how that happens. We'll have to figure it out once we get there. The exam itself consists of both multiple choice questions and what we call performance-based questions, and I'll show you a performance-based question right off. That'll be our first new question, will be a performance-based question. Don't forget that all of my Security Plus videos are available for you to watch for free on my site and on YouTube. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's nothing you have to do to watch the videos. You simply visit the page and you can watch them. It's kind of a different model, isn't it? Not used to that, but there it is. Now, if you wanted an offline version of those videos, you wanted audio MP3 files, you wanted course notes, you wanted practice exams, then you probably want my Success Bundle, which is all of those things provided to you in a nifty USB that's got little logo on it there, but everything's provided. And I will send out, if you get a physical edition of this, I send you the actual physical books to go along with all of this. So you can either get digital versions of this or physical versions of this. They're all available. We'll talk more about that later on. If you want to learn more, go to professormesser.com/601SB for the 601 Success Bundle. There are also some free questions on my website. Go to professormesser.com/take10. We're going to put more there as well. Lots to have a look. If someone's ever trying to find more questions, the questions on the internet are not great. So I try to add questions from time to time. I know that we need to add more 601 out there. So I will absolutely get on that over this next month. Did I say that last month? It's very possible that I did. So I have to explain later on. We'll sit down. I'll explain to you what I've been doing this month. Also got this video live stream is available in a replay podcast form, an audio-only podcast. Go to professormesser.com/podcast. I will tell you that's probably a good place to go to listen and to register. If you're going to Google Podcasts right now, they're having a bit of a bug, and they have deleted my Network Plus and Security Plus podcasts. I didn't delete it. They just decided, maybe they listened to it, and they decided, you know what? Maybe we should delete these. But they did. I sent them a note. They have confirmed that it's a problem on their side, and they're going to be fixing it. So if you are a Google Podcast listener and you're trying to figure out, where is this podcast? They tell me it will be there in the next couple of weeks. It'll be back. We'll have to figure out to get all of those there. I wonder what they're going to have to do to make that happen. Another thing you'll notice if you go out to YouTube, all of my YouTube replays of these study groups have timestamps associated with them in the YouTube video description. We're able to do those thanks to my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching the replay of this, probably at 1.5 or 2x speed, just so she can get through it and get all the timestamps in. You can go back years to get these. They are so useful because you can jump to the question, answer, or even the question in the after show that you're interested in. Find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. Good place to go. If you wanted to stick around afterwards, you notice once the video is over, that's sort of it. Where's everybody go? Well, they probably, most of us anyway, go over to our chat on Discord. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. You can join us. That's usually where I am when I'm not doing a live stream. So it's a great way to keep up with what's going on. There's mobile apps for this. A great resource, professormesser.com/Discord. As always, people who are studying for this exam generally are planning to take the Security Plus exam. I'll remind you to please don't pay full price for your vouchers. There are discounted vouchers available on my site. You don't need a coupon code. They're not available at certain times of the day or certain weeks of the month. You don't have to hunt around the internet for finding a coupon. They're just discounted for everybody. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers and you can get those discounted vouchers. If you purchase the voucher from my site, then you get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a set of exam hacks that can help you study and help you during the exam to maybe get some points that perhaps you might not have gotten. I've taken tons of industry certification exams, and I've put into this book all of the little tricks that I've learned through the years as well. And you get it free just by going to professormesser.com/vouchers and getting your voucher from that page. Let's now go and have a look at that question we looked at earlier. The question was, a security administrator would like to monitor an application for invalid JSON strings. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be SWG, IPS, IPsec, MDM, or SAE? And those of you that have gone out to professormesser.com/QA have locked in your answers. Let's see how you answered. We'll show the results. 42% of you say it's an SWG. And then we have double digits, almost a three-way tie for second between IPS, IPsec, and SAE with 15, 16, 17%. And then 9% of you said MDM, just snuck down under the one digit there. They were all double digits there a moment ago. So lots to look at there. The SWG is the one that we got the plurality of. 43% was the largest number there, now 44. So SWG seems to be where we're leaning, and that's probably because you were here last month, or perhaps you were here earlier. And being able to look through all of those, the next gen secure web gateway, and SWG is a secure web gateway. You can find that the SWG is looking into the data that's being transferred across the network. So it's not just looking at port numbers. It's not just looking at IP addresses. It goes into the JSON that's being transferred. It goes into API calls. It gives you a lot of detail about the way the application is working, and you're able to allow or disallow traffic based on what the application says it's doing. So very detailed in being able to work through. You can find out more on my video on the SY0-601 section 3.6 Cloud Security Solutions. The answer indeed was SWG, 47% of you got that absolutely right. It's not an intrusion prevention system. That doesn't really monitor for invalid JSON strings. It does look for known vulnerabilities. IPsec is generally thought of as an encrypted tunnel. It's one of the very common ways of implementing IPsec on a network. That encrypted tunnel also does nothing about allowing or disallowing JSON strings. We've got an MDM, mobile device managers, which are very good for allowing or preventing your phone from gaining access to certain things on the capabilities of your device, or perhaps even on the network, but they don't monitor for JSON strings. MDMs don't do that. And then an SAE, a simultaneous authentication of equals, is a new method of key exchange available, well, sort of a non-key exchange available in 802.11 WPA3. Lots going on there. Now, if you're trying to figure out, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what JSON is. I don't know what any of this stuff is. I got a whole video for you. Go out to video section 3.6 of my 601 course. Go to the Cloud Security Solutions. I give you an example of JSON and show you how we and why we use JSON to be able to transfer data between one site and another. Very common if you're building applications, kind of a network geek like I am. We don't run into JSON a lot, but it does come up every now and then, especially if you're setting configurations between devices. It's a very useful thing to know. Time to work on your JSON skills. Speaking of working on skills, let's change up the pace here. This is a multiple choice based question, of course. You have a question and there are multiple choices to choose from. But if you've ever taken a CompTIA exam, you know that the first few, maybe handful of questions you get on the exam are not multiple choice. They are, I don't know, anything but multiple choice. They could be fill in the blank. They could be matching. They could be a drag and drop question. You may be selecting things from a pull-down menu. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. You just never know what you might run into. So one of the things I like to do is the first new question of the month, I like to be a performance-based question. And so I have a performance-based question for you today. I apologize in advance for the people listening in on the podcast. This does involve a network map that you do need to be able to see. So we will step through this the best we can for those of you listening in. And you may want to go back to the video replay on YouTube just so you can see what all this is about. Here is our question that asks, create firewall rules that would allow encrypted terminal communication from the web server to the database server and explicitly block all traffic from the storage server to the video server. Now, if you're wondering, what am I talking about? Where are these servers? This is a visual question. So here is the question. And of course, my head is in the way there, so you're not really able to see the entire question. Let's get rid of my head there. Create firewall rules that would allow encrypted terminal communication from the web server to the database server and explicitly block all traffic from the storage server to the video server. So on this picture, you can see that we have on the left side a DMZ that's got a web server, a video server, and a file server. Has a switch that's connected to a firewall in the middle. There is an internet connection also to that firewall. There's also an internal network on this firewall. This firewall is very busy. And on that internal network, you have a database server, a management server, and a storage server. I have a blank rule set right here at the bottom. So I want you to fill in that rule set. So there you go. You've now got a number of items to put into this rule set. You're going to be building your own firewall rules. Now, if you're planning to do anything with security, you're going to be running into firewall rules quite a bit, not only building them, but interpreting what's in the firewall rules. Now, if you want to answer this one, this is more of a fill in the blank. So you can fill in that blank at professormesser.com/QA. That's your link that's on the screen, and fill in both firewall rule number 1 and firewall rule number 2. So make sure that both of those rules are added based on that description that I've put there right at the top of the page. Create firewall rules that would allow encrypted terminal communication from the web server to the database server and explicitly block all traffic from the storage server to the video server. We'll talk about how this is used, why it's used, what we do with this. And for those of you in the chat room that are thinking, I've never seen anything like this before, I don't know what you're talking about, I've never used a firewall, I've never added things to a firewall, it is so exceptionally easy. We'll talk about that in just a moment. While you're putting in those rules, I did want to mention Brad in the chat room earlier on with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Brad. Brad writes, I passed my Security Plus test last week. Congratulations, Brad. Brad also writes, thank you for the top tier videos / practice tests. I'm so glad they were able to help. Also, thanks to the Lori, which is what I should be calling her, the Lori, for great timestamps. And I will absolutely, I don't have to pass it on to her. Lori just heard it. So there you go. Thank you, Brad, for the $5 super chat. We appreciate your use of the courses. I'm glad they worked out for you. And congratulations on your Security Plus as well. We'll figure this out as we step through this. Can you buy vouchers if you're living in the UK? You can, but not from my site. The vouchers on my site, unfortunately, are only good if you are physically located in the United States, Canada, or some of the U.S. territories. The details on that are listed on that page. I am so sorry that I just don't have any UK or Australia or other country vouchers, at least not at this point. I got to work on that. Let's see how we did with these firewall rules. Let's step through each one. I'm going to explain to you the process I go through to build a firewall rule. This is a relatively easy firewall rule because it only has port numbers and IP addresses. That's kind of it. So we will see how we do with all of this. Let's step through each one of these. I'm going to build out my rule set. Let's start with rule number 1. And let's start with the first thing that's listed. The first thing says, create firewall rules that would allow encrypted terminal communication from the web server to the database server. So what we want to do is build out what that looks like. So let's see if we can build out an explanation of what that is. So we know that the web server is over here in the DMZ. The database server is on the other side, and we need a rule that would allow encrypted terminal from the web server to the database server. So there's our link between those two. We're starting on the web server, and we need to effectively, encrypted terminal communication, that's SSH. We need to SSH from the web server to the database server. So the web server is 10.1.1.2. That will be our source IP address. The destination will be the database server, or 10.2.1.20. And now we need to know our port numbers. Now, this is a bit of a challenge because if you look at the Security Plus exam objectives, there are no port numbers listed anywhere in the exam objectives. But yet, here's a question that clearly wants you to know whether this is a certain port number or not. So the best thing I can recommend is these are port numbers you should already know. You've probably already been through A+, you've probably already been through Network Plus, and you probably have some practical experience on the industry. So SSH is one that you should absolutely know about to be able to work through those. So we know if we go back in time or we've worked with these before, we know that SSH is going to be a TCP protocol running on port 22. Now, if you were working with a newer next generation firewall and you did not want to put in a port number, you wanted the firewall just to automatically recognize if it was SSH, no matter what port number was being used, then you would probably have a column here called application, and you would simply fill in SSH. Maybe we'll do that one next time. So we'll work through those. But absolutely an encrypted terminal communication is indeed TCP port 22. That is SSH. And our question says that we would like to allow that encrypted terminal communication. So our disposition field down here is the last part of the rule is to allow. So our source IP 10.1.1.2, the destination is 10.2.1.20. We want to, for TCP 22, we want to allow that traffic, and already we're through the first half of this question. Now let's do the second half of the question, which was explicitly block all traffic from the storage server to the video server. So our storage server is down here on the internal network. It is 10.2.1.33, and our video server is here in the DMZ. It's 10.1.1.7. So we have already our IP addresses. Let's set those up. Our source IP will be 10.2.1.33. Our destination IP will be 10.1.1.7. Now we have to block all traffic. So in this particular case, the protocol and the port number is anything. It's any. If you've ever worked with firewalls and you're doing some troubleshooting, this is a common term that you'll hear security administrators use. Hey, could you just build, just for a moment, build an any rule between these two so I could do some testing. That way you know the firewall is not going to block anything in between. Allow any. Or in the particular case of this rule, we're not allowing any. We're allowing, did I put the wrong IP in? 10.1.1? Oh, it is 17. Look at that. Watch what happens here. It's not 17. It's 7. You didn't see anything. That was like magic that just happened there. So now you see it's the right one, 10.1.1.7. See, it was right the whole time. It must have been something in your eye. Just scratch your eye there. It's fine. We'll figure. Thank you, chat room. The chat room's got my back, so we can fix those things before they get bad. Any, and in this case, we're not going to allow any. We're going to block any. So anything that's going between 10.2.1.33 and 10.1.1.7, any is indeed blocked. So those are, now the chat room, they're so fast to be able to get there. There is a camera today. It's just that my head gets in the way of the question that's there. So that's why you don't see me for the moment. So 10.2.1.33 to 10.1.1.7, any, and block. These are, sometimes you'll hear these referred to firewall rules. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to security policies. It's one of those where you're building out an ACL. ACL is a very broad term, an access control list. Operating systems use ACLs, firewalls use ACLs, some switches and routers have ACL functionality within them. But for firewalls, we don't commonly call it an ACL. We commonly call it a firewall rule set, or we call it a security policy, generally because it adds some context. ACL is such a broad term, an access control list. So in this particular case, we've got quite a bit there to look at, but those two rules are what we would be using. Now, there's about 1 million questions that are coming up about this particular set of rules. So let me step through a couple of them, and then we will backtrack through any. Now, if you can use any, why didn't you just use any for the protocol up here for TCP/22, for SSH? Well, SSH only operates on TCP/22. You're not going to find SSH running on UDP. So you would not want to open up more access than what is required to allow that particular application to work. I mean, if that was the case, why didn't you make it any allow? Then you're not firewalling at all, but the firewall rule would work. You never want to add more access than what is required by the application, just from a basic security perspective. Pretty important. You want to make sure that you are really focusing and have the most granular rules in the firewall that you can. Don't give attackers any extra help. Make sure your firewall is as tight as possible and there's no holes. You don't want your firewall turning into Swiss cheese, where there's just all these little holes that would allow access through that normally would not be used by anything. One of the most enormous things you can work on in an enterprise is auditing your firewall rules, because there are usually hundreds of these, and you have to go through every single rule and make sure that rule is set up the way it should be and being able to work through there. So that's absolutely the case. Now, could you put under protocol, could you put TCP UDP? It depends on the firewall. The different firewalls use different nomenclature, but in your case, this was a fill in the blank. And if your fill in the blank was something that was the same thing as any, maybe you put in TCP UDP, then absolutely I would accept that. That's perfectly reasonable. You got it. You figured it out. You know exactly what you're doing there, and being able to work through those. Pretty useful to know what those rules are. That is a good example of a set of firewall rules and knowing why you would use firewall rules and make that happen. But this is a very common process. Every time you see someone asking you to allow or disallow traffic through a firewall, you should be looking at these very common tuples, something like a source IP address, a destination IP address, a port number, application name. And in some cases, some firewalls have additional tuples like time of day. Maybe this would only allow access during normal working hours and would automatically block any access after the working hours. You can absolutely do that with today's firewalls. A very good example of what you can use, very useful set of functionality. And if you are planning to take your Security Plus exam, you could absolutely be asked questions about these firewall rules. You never know what you're going to get on the exam, and I think this is pretty good. All would be fine too. This is one where, as long as you capture the thought behind building these rules out. If you use the term all, that's fine. If you use any, that's fine. If you use an asterisk, that's fine too. As long as you put something in there that is at least qualified there. I would think on an exam, it's not going to be more of a fill in the blank. You'll probably have a drag and drop. So it probably would say all or any or asterisk, and then you would just drag and drop it onto the list. Could you expect to see ports on the exam? Some ports of any kind you could. A question like this certainly lends itself to asking questions that deal with port numbers. However, as I mentioned, the Security Plus exam objectives don't have any port numbers on them. So although there could be questions with port numbers, we don't know what port numbers they might choose. So I think if you know the top 5, you know HTTP, you know SSH, you know maybe NTP, you know there's a few 5 or 6 that are just very common that you probably should just know off the top of your head. So that's what I would recommend you do as well. That is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to step through these rule sets and being able to work through them. You may also want to do it the other way. You may want to look at a rule set and then see if you can figure out where the traffic flow goes based on what you see already in the firewall. So try to do it backwards to see if you can figure out those details. Working with firewalls is a lot of fun, something I did for years with next generation firewalls. It's always something interesting, always something different. It's one of the reasons I just love IT security. So that is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to walk through those and figure out the details. Before we go to our next question, I have a multiple choice-based question next. I want to thank Rockboy Gill in the chat room with the $5 super chat, who writes, "Thank you, Professor. Your content helped me pass the Security Plus exam last week in just 3 months of study. Congratulations, Gil, on your Security Plus certification, and thank you for the $5 super chat." Also in the chat room, Sipir-Roth08. Thank you for the very easy-to-read username. But I do appreciate the $1.99 super chat, who says, "Studying for A+, but I enjoy all your live streams." I think actually there's so much overlap between these exams. I think maybe you might even learn something that's going to help you for the A+ just by walking through these. So there's your performance-based question of the month. Thank you for those super chats for Rockboy Gill and Roth08. See, now you've got an abbreviation just because I find it too difficult to read myself through this. Let's do a multiple choice-based question. Let's shift gears back to multiple choice. And this multiple choice question asks, which of the following tools would allow a security administrator to extract a browser history from a drive image? Boy, there's a lot going on with this question. The question again asks, which of the following tools would allow a security administrator to extract a browser history from a drive image? Would it be HPing, Autopsy, the Harvester, Nessus, or Sniper? Which of the following tools would allow a security administrator to extract a browser history from a drive image? Already I'm getting uncomfortable. Is it HPing, Autopsy, the Harvester, Nessus, or Sniper? Now, if you're somebody who's been working through these different different types of tools and utilities. All of these are from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you think you know which one it is, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. There's your link that's right there on the screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to go right there and figure out the details. What section was that last one from? I guess the video on ACLs is probably where the best place to go to learn more of this, to be able to work through it. We'll have to see what it happens to be. If you were someone who is trying to figure out firewall rules, ACLs, that's probably the one you're working through. So make sure you're familiar with all of those. And we can always look that up in the after show. If you're still trying to hunt that down, where did it come from? Usually I put a link there, but I just didn't put a link on that one. So we'll figure out the details. There are a lot of tools in the SY0-601 exam. They probably doubled the number of utilities that are in there that you need to know about. You don't necessarily need to be able to kind of work through everything that's there, but you certainly need to be able to understand more about what these tools do, have a broad understanding. So you may have never used HPing or Autopsy or the Harvester or Nessus or Sniper, but if you know that those particular utilities and what they do, and here's when you would use them and how you would make use of them, that's probably one of the most important parts for the SY0-601 exam. Now, could they ask you on the 601 exam to actually use one of these utilities? I guess they could. They don't tend to go that deep into every single one of them, because you could probably write a book on all 5 of these utilities. There are books written on all 5 of these utilities, I'm almost certain. Maybe not HPing, but the others, certainly there are enormous amounts of documentation. You don't need to go into that level of detail. You just need to be able to get here and make this happen. So let's see how we do with this question. Let's see how your answers turned out. The question asked, which of the following tools would allow a security administrator to extract a browser history from a drive image? Is it HPing, Autopsy, the Harvester, Nessus, or Sniper? And let's see how you answered. You can see that 56% of you say it's Autopsy. We can also see that there are 19% that said the Harvester. I like the name of that one. It certainly sounds like something that would allow you to extract a browser history. 14% say Nessus, which doesn't sound like it does anything. We're not sure what that does. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Sniper and HPing got single digits at 8% and 4% apiece. Now, this is an interesting challenge, of course, and it's one from an IT security perspective. It's really useful if you know how to do things like this, because let's say you run across a machine that has been involved in your company, and this is something that has indeed happened to me, is that we've identified this machine as perhaps having information on there that is illegal information, that someone has used this to perform some illegal tasks. So there is a criminal aspect to this. Or maybe it's a civil issue, and we have to collect information from that machine. One of the first things you would do is to image the drive. That's what a number of forensics experts will do, is absolutely get a copy, a sector by sector copy of that drive, so we can see everything that's on that drive. And the next thing you want to do is now use the image to be able to do all of your forensics work. And fortunately, there are some fantastic tools that can help you dive into the image and will find a lot of information for you. We talk about this in our video specifically on getting those images. This is one that you would use, and in fact, if you were working on this, you would probably be using an application called Autopsy. Autopsy is a fantastic utility. It is free to use. You can download it and start using it right now. You can take an image of a drive, have Autopsy examine that image, and it understands many different image formats from many different operating systems, and have it go through and find every graphics file, every email message, every metadata from every document. It can show you and build out, it can show you deleted files and what those were, and it can find your browser history from that image and show you everything that's listed in the browser history, along with many, many, many other things. So that's why I always tell people, if you are someone who is trying to keep things private, having something on your computer, even somewhere where you think it's hidden away, does not help you. Autopsy will find it, and it will be able to provide you with a lot of detail about what's on your system. Just an example of what Autopsy will do. It'll find your downloaded files, your browser history, your email messages, databases, a lot of information. It is an amazing tool. There's some great videos on the YouTube that step through the use of Autopsy, and it's something, as I mentioned, you can download and try using this yourself. If you want to have some great fun, I've done this before, buy some used drives off of eBay that say they're empty. You receive those files, image them, do a sector-by-sector image, and then have Autopsy try to find something. It's remarkable, the information that you will find on these drives. I have found lots of details, lots of information from drives that I purchased as used drives, loaded it into Autopsy, and it is remarkable. It's scary what that's able to do. And if you're someone who's an IT security professional, you're someone who has worked on these for a while, or you just have an interest in getting into the forensic side of things, which is a remarkable place to work, Autopsy is something you should absolutely be familiar with. If you answered Autopsy, answer B. 57% of you got that absolutely correct. 18% said the Harvester. The Harvester is very good for finding information that it might be on public websites. So if you're trying to find that information that might be on Facebook, on LinkedIn, it will automatically go out to these public sources of information and pull this information down into a database so you could be able to see everything that's there. 13% say Nessus. Nessus is a remarkable system for being able to find vulnerabilities. It's primarily known as a vulnerability scanner. It goes a little bit beyond what is traditional for a vulnerability scanner, but it is a great vulnerability scanner, one of the standards for the industry. 9% said Sniper. Sniper is great for being able to find even more details after the fact on the internet. Sniper, great use to target and find information for particular websites. Sniper is not very good for extracting browser history from a drive image. It won't do that at all. And then HPing, kind of a ping command with some additional functionality. You can effectively craft your own ping and other types of data flows, and only 3% thought that was any good. HPing is definitely not the right answer. Autopsy was the right answer. If you answered B, 56% of you got that one absolutely right. A couple of questions came up there before we talk about those questions. One from, want to mention Brian with the $10 super chat. Brian says, Professor Messer, I cannot thank you enough for a year of failing the 501. Brian hung in there. Brian says, I followed your course and passed the 601 this month. Congratulations, Brian. Your content is thorough and concise. I'm truly grateful for it, and I'm grateful that you used it, Brian. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks for your support of what we do here. You're effectively paying it forward for the next person as well and keeping these lights on, so thank you so much for that. Autopsy is a free application. You can download it and start using it right now. It is a lot of fun to play around with. Make sure you do that. And an interesting question in the chat room, which comes up from time to time, and nobody likes my answer. Well, the question was, all right, I bought these hard drives on the internet that were used and there was still data on them. How many times should a drive be overwritten to securely remove data? Well, when you overwrite data on a drive, one time it's gone. Anything underneath is just gone. You're not going to get it back. So the second you overwrite any bit of data on a drive, you cannot go back in time somehow underneath the surface of that to try to collect what was there originally. And that's why in Windows, for instance, if you do a format, the default format now is to overwrite every sector when it does a format. And once you do that with a standard format, you can't get any of that data back. I know there will be people on the internet who will tell you that you can use some type of electron microscope and get into the data somehow and go back in time, change physics, and somehow find that data. That you can't. Nobody does. Nobody's ever done that. There's no documented case of anyone ever being able to retrieve data using an electron microscope. Sounds like you could, though, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be great if we could justify an electron microscope for our IT security, but actually doesn't do anything. You overwrite it, it's gone. That's it. You aren't getting it back. How do the police catch people who try to overwrite files? Well, if they overwrote it, then they can't use that as evidence. They are not retrieving it. The government, the police, the IT professionals, there's no way to get that data back. It's gone. One time. You overwrite it one time, and it is vapor. It's history. It's Memorex. So why does everybody say, including the Department of Defense, to use 3 passes or 7 passes or multiple passes? I don't know. I guess they feel that the rumor, were it true, because clearly they don't have an electron microscope, so they can't prove that you can't retrieve that data with an electron microscope. So let's just be safe and say 3 times. The reality is, once you did it once, that was it. It was gone. You can't get it back. I know it kind of goes past what we've always been told. We've always been told that you can somehow, using a Marvel superhero tactic, use some type of X-ray vision to be able to see. That's more of a DC, but to see what's underneath. No, there's no way to do that. There's no way to make that happen. You're just going to have to deal with the fact that you've lost the data, I suppose. And no, that doesn't hurt the drive. You can wipe it 1,000,000 times. Doesn't hurt the drive. That's why that works. So let's do, now if you do a quick format, which only deletes the index, you're not overwriting the actual data on the drive, then yes, you could retrieve it. And I talk about that in my A+ videos too, to be able to get there. It's very possible. Now we're sort of mixing things up. The chat room says Dr. Strange could do it. Yeah, you may be onto something there. Let's go to the next question on our list, which says, an audit has found credit card transfers sent across the network in plain text. Which of the following would be non-compliant for this issue? Would it be GDPR, 802.1x, OWASP, PCI DSS, or TPM? An audit has found credit card transfers sent across the network in plain text. Which of the following would be non-compliant for this issue? Would it be GDPR, 802.1x, OWASP, PCI DSS, or TPM? I want to go back to one of those questions that somebody wrote earlier, and I'll tell you, after I've spoken with a number of forensics experts in the world that really know their stuff. They get into drives, that are able to find data, that know the intricacies of what Windows does underneath the surface and can hunt down data. And one of the questions that somebody asked is, how does somebody, if you securely delete a file, and there are utilities out there you can get just to delete one file on your drive, and that file is, anything that was stored for that file is now deleted. That file is absolutely deleted, and you can't retrieve that. So how are people able to gain access to the data if you really deleted that file, if you securely deleted that file? Well, that's because in almost every case, in a remarkable number of cases, I won't say almost every, but certainly a large number of cases, when you are writing a file, you get into Microsoft Word, you start working with this file, you start putting things into your document. Yes, it is saving your doc file, your docx file on your drive, but there's just a slew of temporary files, of cached information, of other data for that document that's being stored somewhere else on that drive. And the people who are very good at forensics know exactly where that data is stored, and they go collect all of the dust, all those pieces of documents, and bring that back. So perhaps they would not be able to reconstruct the entire document, but they can certainly grab bits that may be stored in that cache or in that extra standby area for that particular application. Just remarkable to have there. We'll talk about more on this in just a bit. To have this there. There's a lot of things about Windows that I'll have to find a really great video on YouTube where we have one of these forensics experts talk about these things. It's so surprising how much data and metadata is spread throughout a drive, and how when you think you've deleted a file, then in fact, there's plenty of other places where you can start gathering information about what you were doing there. The cloud just brings a whole nother set of things into it. Let's talk about this question, though, which asks, an audit has found credit card transfers sent across the network in plain text. Which of the following would be non-compliant for this issue? Would it be GDPR, 802.1x, OWASP, PCI DSS, or TPM? 63% of you say it's PCI DSS. 15% said GDPR. OWASP comes in at 10%. And then we have 802.1x at 8% and TPM at 5%. Plenty to look at in this question. Let's see if we can talk about what this is. Obviously, being able to have credit card transfers go across the network in plain text, not a good thing. Credit card information should just always be encrypted by default. But as someone who has worked on enterprise networks with next generation firewalls and has complete visibility on everything going across the network, it is remarkable how many times I have seen on production networks data like credit cards being sent in the clear. It happens all the time because there's nobody checked when they built the application. This is the process they have in place, and that's what they were using. So we were able to hunt those things down in a number of different ways because they were violating, in the case of credit card numbers, the payment card industry's data security standard, or PCI DSS. This is the standard that allows people to understand how to protect these files, how to protect this data for credit cards. We keep changing and modifying and making credit card transactions more and more and more secure. It is a moving target. It's always a challenge to stay up to date and to make payment systems that can somehow restrict or limit what attackers might be able to do. But the payment card industry has their own set of standards. And they say if you're going to be performing credit card transactions, you're going to be storing data, you're going to be working with credit card numbers, you must comply with these standards. It is the PCI DSS, the payment card industry data security standard. These other standards that are here are certainly important standards. The GDPR in the EU to be able to keep your private information safe. 802.1x that is used for authentication on networks. That's certainly an important standard to have. OWASP, TPM, these are all technologies that are built to either understand how security is to work or to implement it, especially on the encryption side with the Trusted Platform module. Those are extremely useful. If you're someone who is ever working through the challenge of acronyms on this exam, this is a really good question for you because all of these acronyms are important. They all mean different things. So make sure you are familiar with everything that is listed here and all the acronyms that are on your Security Plus exam objectives. Before we go to the next question, I want to thank Dwayne Fields in the chat room. Dwayne, did I say it right? $20 super chat coming off the top rope. They write, studied for more than 6 months, passed Security Plus early this month, landed my first IT job this week. It actually happens, people. They write, thank you for sharing this awesome content in a clear and smart way. You are a GOAT. I don't think it means I'm a goat. I think it means I'm a GOAT, a G-O-A-T. You did make it an abbreviation. Although I like goats, so being a goat's fine too. These are, and thank you absolutely for the $20 super chat. Certainly not, I like that you are using the super chats. I think that's fantastic. It is not a requirement, but it is absolutely appreciated. Yes, I know that what the goat is. I'm making fun of goats. To be able to have that there. Those super chats go a long way into keeping these lights on. So I sure appreciate that. And your support, just watch the videos, participate in the live streams. All of these things really help. So thank you so much. Yes, I know it was a joke. It was a very bad joke. I apologize. Before we get to our next question, I want to remind you that there are so many things that you should be studying for the Security Plus exam. You should get a good book. You should watch some videos. You should get some practical hands-on experience. And lastly, you want to be sure that you get some really good Q&A to test yourself, to see if you really did learn everything that was in those other documents. One of the things I found, though, is that the practice exams that I've seen on the internet for free aren't really that great. They're not good at all. in some cases. Some are okay. Some I get a lot of emails about, and don't send me any more emails about bad questions on the internet, because all I can do is just send you a note back going, yeah, it's a bad question. Don't bother with that. In fact, if you're recognizing it's a bad question, you're doing pretty good. I have digital and physical versions of my practice exams book. This is delivered as a PDF in the digital version or a physical printed version. It's thick. It's a big book, 380 pages, 3 separate 90-question exams, including multiple choice and performance-based questions on there. Let's do one. I've got the book right here. Let's roll up this book. I'm just on the first set of questions on the SY0-601 practice exams book. And this question says, a CISO, that's a Chief Information Security Officer, would like to decrease the response time when addressing security incidents. Unfortunately, the company does not have the budget to hire additional security engineers. Which of the following would assist the CISO with this requirement? Would ISO 27701 help? Would PKI help? Would IAAS help? Or would SOAR help? Now, this is a PDF, so I could go up to the PDF annotation, and I could maybe even write on here, well, I think it could be A or C. Maybe I think it's C. Maybe I think it's D. You can start changing some of these things on the screen, or if you have a pen on your tablet, you can do that as well. There's a lot to look at with these. But one of the things you'll also see on this book is I've got 2 links for the answers. If you just want to know if it's A, B, C, or D, you can go to Quick Answer 33, and you can jump right to page 33 for that. But I want to know the details for this answer. I want to go to page 50. You can certainly page forward in your book to page 50. If you have the digital version, I have links built in, so you can simply click the details, and it jumps to page 50. In the browser, I say that it does. I'm now annotating the link, and that doesn't help anybody if you're trying to get to page 50. The Security PE book is the one that you're looking for. If you're someone who is working through all of these questions and trying to figure out what the best way to do this is going to be, I think getting a book that tries to emulate the same style and feel of the actual exam questions is important. But I also think that it should give you more information. When I'm answering these questions, and this jumps to page 50, I want to be able to really understand why a question was right or why a question was wrong. So on page 50 with the detailed answers, you can see that the answer was indeed SOAR, answer D, and I explain why that is the right answer. But I never get it right. I never get answers right on the exam or my practice questions anyway. And so I give you all of the incorrect answers. I explain why each incorrect answer is incorrect. That way, when you get a question wrong, if you chose PKI, then you'll see, oh, here's why PKI isn't the right answer and why SOAR is the right answer. It's an opportunity to really understand why a question was right or wrong. Now I can learn something from the questions rather than going through and trying to understand why I would want to memorize questions. You never want to memorize anything to be able to make that happen. So that's the one. And everybody in the chat room is wondering about the price of SOAR. There's absolutely free SOAR options out there. And by the way, anything that's automated is always going to be less expensive than hiring someone. Always. The people, your personnel costs, the cost of hiring people is the most expensive business cost that you have. It is very rare that you would run into a company that has a larger cost than this, because personnel is just an enormous hit to the bottom line for any company. So that's why, in this case, SOAR makes perfect sense. Now, if you don't know what SOAR is, and you're trying to figure out what are you talking about, where did this question come from, if you scroll down a bit, there's a QR code and a link right to the security configurations page, and you can go from there and really understand where this came from and learn more about the topic in general. Those are all in my practice exams book. You can learn more about this by going to professormesser.com/securitype, or you can, of course, go to Professor Messer website. There's links on the top for Security Plus. You can find all of those. Plenty there that might help you as you're trying to study for your exams. There's other choices on my site too. If you wanted to bundle these together with CompTIA's Cert Master Practice, they have their own practice exams. I have a bundle of both of these together that actually costs less than if you went to the CompTIA site directly. So there's lots of options on the site. If you want more Q&A, there's more Q&A. There's lots out here you can look at. Feel free to look around at professormesser.com/securitype. Let's do some more questions. Not just the ones I wrote there, but a brand new one you've never seen before, because all of these are brand new questions that you've never seen before. This question asks, which of the following would best describe an IOC? Would it be a system is expected to fail every 3 years? All wireless traffic is encrypted? An audit is performed every 6 months? All laptops are configured for FDE? Or a file hash value has changed? Let's do the question again. The question asks, which of the following would best describe an IOC? Is it that a system is expected to fail every 3 years? Is it that all wireless traffic is encrypted? Is it that an audit is performed every 6 months? Is it all laptops are configured for FDE? Or is it that a file hash value has changed? If you think you know the answer, follow that link on your page, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See what that happens to be. This is one that you have to know acronyms, or at least know how those acronyms are used. I get to a point where I have acronyms. I know what the acronym stands for, at least broadly. Even if I don't memorize what the actual words are, I know what that acronym is. You know, if you said to somebody, hand me the HDMI cable, you know, they're going to hand you HDMI, but do you actually remember, okay, HDMI, high definite, nobody thinks through the words that are associated with that. So that's why it's so much easier to even say acronyms. That's why we use them so much. It's just easier to say that whenever you're working on these technologies. And it's something that is common in Security Plus. It's common in A+. It's probably most common on the Network Plus. So that's why whenever I start getting into working with these, that's why working with this makes it so much better. If you know the acronym, maybe it might help you on the answer, but sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't tell you anything about this. This one, I think, could help you. If you know what an IOC is, then I think this could help you with this answer. Yeah, I think it could be. So we'll have to see which one you choose for this. This will be interesting. A number of you have locked in your answer. Let's see how we do with this one. If we are, let's see how you answered. Which of the following would best describe an IOC? Is that a system is expected to fail every 3 years, all wireless traffic is encrypted, an audit is performed every 6 months, all laptops are configured for FDE, or a file hash value has changed? And you can see that 54% of you, just over half, we finally have a majority there. It says, not finally, it's another majority that we have, that a file hash value changing is a description of an IOC. We have 22% that said an audit is performed every 6 months. 10% said a system is expected to fail every 3 years. And then single digits, 7% for all wireless traffic is encrypted. And 8% says all laptops are configured for FDE. Well, you first have to know about an IOC. An IOC is an indicator of compromise. An indicator of compromise is where we would be focusing to be able to understand, are we being attacked? Has someone gained access to our systems? Are we able to really understand where these are coming from? If you're looking at something associated with a break-in or someone being on your network that perhaps should not be on your network, then you have identified an IOC, an indicator of compromise. So a good example of what some of these might be are listed here. So if there's network activity suddenly gets very busy, well, that's certainly an indicator that perhaps there could be someone who has compromised your network and is now transferring files outside of your network. And any exfiltration like that will certainly cause the amount of network traffic to increase. A changing of hash values. Maybe you have already collected a series of hash values in a particular directory. You know that those files will never change. And then all of a sudden you get a report that one of those files has changed. That's not supposed to happen. That could potentially mean that something has been compromised. Irregular international traffic, changes to DNS data, uncommon login patterns. Whenever I update the certificate on my web server, I get a message from one of the services I use that monitors that and tells me, just thought we'd let you know, your certificate just changed on your server. And if I'm the one that changed it, I like seeing that. Now, if I happen to receive that message and I didn't change my certificate, that may be an indicator of some type of compromise. So this is not a finite list. There are tons of things you might find on your network that might lead you to believe that your systems or network have been compromised. All of those would be indicators of compromised an IOC. So if we go back to our list of indicators of compromise, there we go. We can see that the 54% of you that chose a file hash value has changed. That absolutely could lead you to think maybe something weird's going on here. That might be an IOC. We need to do more investigation. 22% said an audit is performed every 6 months. Well, audits are just something you should be performing every 6 months anyway. It's part of your processes and procedures for keeping things safe, but it's not an indicator of compromise. You're going to do the audit every 6 months anyway. You don't do it because you think that the audit itself doesn't qualify as a compromise. Although if you met some auditors, you might think that. I don't mean that. I do mean that. 10% of you said a system is expected to fail every 3 years. Those 10% of you saying that it's going to fail, well, that's certainly a good value. It's good information that can help you from a security perspective so you know to be ready when that fails every 3 years. But that is not an indicator of compromise. That's just a system that fails every 3 years. So not the right answer there either. 8% said all laptops are configured for full disk encryption. That's what FDE is. You're running BitLocker, for example, in your Windows laptops. That is not an indicator of compromise. That's good security practices. And 7% of you said all wireless traffic is encrypted. Again, another good example of a best practice. That is not an indicator of compromise. The IOC we were looking for is exactly answer E, a file hash value has changed. We are at the top of the hour. Boy, that went by really, really fast. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, make sure that you go to the top of the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a link there for contact us. That is the link you want to click. And if you click that link, you can see there is a form that comes up. If you put your name, your email address, and put in the subject line that this is the February Security Plus study group, and you put as a super secret code word on a line by itself in the body of that message, the super secret code word is, of course, IOC, then I will send you a 1-hour webinar category CEU in your email. After all of that, you can find those. That's what an IOC is. The indicator of compromise is also a term that we're going to use as our super secret code word of the month. So it works both ways, right? To have those. File hash values changed. IOC is our super secret code word of the month. I really do plan on getting those out today. So if you send it in, for those of you watching live, I hope to have them back to be able to have them available. Now, I know it's top of the hour, but let's do one more question. I think you're going to know this question anyway. It might be a gimme, but so I figure let's do it right now. It's certainly something you need to know. And yes, thank you, chat room. The question was, are CEUs from past videos also valid? They absolutely are. You can go back to any of those previous videos and send me that as well. If you do it in a single message for each question, it goes much faster on my side. It's much better for me. And it gets you the CEUs much faster as well. You can only collect 10 webinar category CEUs for renewal during any 3-year Security Plus period, renewal period. But so you have to get the other CEUs somewhere else or use something like CertMaster CE to be able to just do it all at one time. You don't need any CEU collection. That's another question we can answer for later. Let's do another one. Next question up on our list asks, which of the following technologies store information in a distributed ledger? Would it be CASB, HSM, blockchain, SSID, or PII? Which of the following technologies store information in a distributed ledger? Is it a CASB, HSM, blockchain, SSD, or PII? Yes, chat room. If you are, if you're waiting on your Network Plus CEU from last week, I've not processed them yet. I have got them ready to go, though. I really do expect them to go out today. Usually they get out in about a week, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. Sorry about that. So that's just the way it works for me to be able to make that happen. I think whenever you're working through these, it can be a challenge knowing all these different abbreviations. Even if you know the answer to this one, make sure you know all the abbreviations there as well, because everything on this page is a real thing. They all come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you can absolutely be asked these if you go through this. If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Figure them out. Yeah, I've got a bunch. There are hundreds in an email folder that are just automatically put there, and I go through them. Pretty much there's a set of, it's semi-automated. I look at it, I verify it's valid, then I click a button and it builds the reply and sends it back to you. But I have to manually validate every single one of them just to maintain a bit of integrity on my side. I'd like you to know that the CEUs that you're getting, and sometimes people send me a message and it doesn't include any of the information we talked about. And so they don't get a CEU. So there are times, it's rare, when somebody sends me, hey, send me a CEU. That's all it says. Like, nope, can't. There's nothing there. You haven't proven that you watched anything. That's the whole point of this. You have to prove you watched it. And part of that is not just knowing the name, but stepping through the process. The process is part of the CEU validation, just so you're familiar and working through those. So let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following technologies store information in a distributed ledger? Is it CASB, HSM, blockchain, SSID, or PII? Now, in this case, there's actually multiple places where you could lean one way or the other with this. But most everybody chose, 79% of you chose, I didn't even know the number, I just assumed most of you knew it, that it's blockchain. That's the technology that stores everything in a distributed ledger. There was a question asked to me earlier in the week, like, how distributed is this? We always talk about the blockchain as being a distributed and very scalable and redundant network. But how redundant is it? It's super redundant because everybody has the potential for keeping their own copy of the ledger. And when you have thousands of copies of this ledger and maybe somebody loses a network connection, it's okay. We have 999 copies of the ledger out here to be able to work through there. So it would not be CASB, which is certainly useful for being able to set security policies on cloud-based services. HSM is technologies for hardware management, especially very commonly of website certificates, website private keys specifically. We have SSID, certainly the service set identifier for wireless doesn't have a distributed ledger. Nope. And PII, your personally identifiable information, is not one that you would have there either. It doesn't help at all with the distributed ledger. Blockchain is the distributed ledger. There's plenty of ways to implement blockchains and be able to use them as applications and being able to work through them. The blockchains, I think we most commonly associate them with cryptocurrency because it's certainly one of the most common uses of a distributed blockchain. But we can do a lot of things with blockchains. And there are certainly many applications that are being built right now that have some of those capabilities. Things like payment processing. We could vote digitally and be assured that our voting is going to be tightly controlled because we can have everything on a public ledger. You know, those are real examples and being able to work through them. So hopefully that can help you when you're trying to figure out how would this blockchain apply to anything else. Well, certainly cryptocurrency, but everything else, there's ways you could extend this and ideas behind blockchain we haven't even come up with yet. It's the beauty of technology, isn't it? Absolutely. So there is the right answer. If you answered C, blockchain, 79% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer, and well done with that one. All the questions we went through in this set of 1 hour Q&A come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you have a copy of these. Absolutely, you want to really focus on all of the bullets inside of these set of objectives. They will tell you everything you need to know for the exam. Someone is mentioning in the pre-show what topics were the things you really needed to know for the exam. Well, anything that's in this list is what you really need to know for the exam. If it is not in this list, then you absolutely do not want to be in a situation where you are going through your exam and studying things outside of this list. You're probably not going to be asked about anything that's not on this list. So it's a very detailed set, and it's free. Go download it. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and use the link on that page to take you over to the CompTIA website, or just go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. You can absolutely find those. I think there's plenty to go through. We do one of these study groups every month. Next month, all of the study groups are moved up a month. So normally I get a week off at the end of the month. I just sit around. I drink mint juleps by the pool. That's not what I do. But I have plenty to do during that week. Well, I don't get a bye week this time. This time, next week, we jump right back into it on Tuesday and Thursday with A+ study groups. On March the 9th is a Network Plus study group, and on March the 16th is Security Plus. If you've been on my A+ or Network Plus study groups earlier this month, those are different dates than I told you. So as a good example is I like to make sure everybody knows this is what I want to do, but my life is chaotic at times and I have to move things around sometimes. So always keep track of what we're doing by going to professormesser.com/calendar, just so you know. That's the first thing I update. When suddenly someone calls and says, you have this thing on the 16th. Like, oh, okay, we got to move this to the 14th. We got to move it to the 17th. We got to move it somewhere. I'll move it, and immediately I'm setting it up in the calendar with the new date. So you are up to date if you're going to professormesser.com/calendar. Just by going through a couple of questions today, you can see that there is an enormous amount of information in this exam. This is a huge exam. So huge that when I built out a set of notes for this exam, they are 120 pages long. They are enormous. And if you go look at the notes, these are the PDF version of these notes. They have the text from my videos. They have graphics from my videos. They have the charts that I create from my videos. Everything that's in my video, I try to put into these notes. These are a great resource for people that are trying to figure out how can I have one consolidated view. Even if you're not able to go through every bit of the exam, you might want to get the digital or physical version of these notes so that you're able to work through them and be able to understand what's expected of you when you walk into the exam on exam day. Find out more about these by going to professormesser.com/601CN. And thank you so much for your continuing support with those, by the way. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A, but there's still more to go through. Instead of me asking questions in this next hour, I'm going to take questions from the chat room, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So stick around for our after show. Don't forget about our weekly pop quiz questions on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter, and the graphical version of those with the pretty picture at professormesser.com/Instagram. If you liked this particular first hour of the study group, we would love it if you hit that thumbs up button on the live page or on the replay page. It really does help a lot. Help us with keeping things going over on the YouTube side of things. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, the course notes and exams are on the Professor Messer website. You can jump right over there by going to professormesser.com/securitycn. Stick around for the after show. We got plenty more to talk about. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Okay, it is time for an after show, everybody. Hello, chat room. Now's the time. All of my questions are done. I don't have any more questions for you. In fact, let's close that out. Let's not talk about distributed ledgers anymore. I am instead going to change around some of the graphics here so we can talk about things in the after show, as long as I choose the right link here. There we go. Get a better lower third going. And that way you'll know exactly where to go to ask your questions. I'm taking questions from the chat room today. You can certainly go there at professormesser.com/live. There's a video in a chat there. It's exactly the same video and chat you find if you go over on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it's the YouTube chat. That's where I'm taking these questions from and being able to do this. The challenge with security is vast. I am absolutely going to I'll take questions about Security Plus in the after show, but really this is sort of an open set of questions you can ask, gosh, about anything or questions you might have. For example, question from I'll be Outlaw in the chat room: is the Security Plus exam due to update soon like A+? It is not. Security Plus has been out for a couple of years now. We have plenty of time before we think that Security Plus will ever go away. I mentioned this sort of early on, but it's worth going through these dates again that are on here. So here are the dates. The current SY0-601 was released on November 12th of 2020. So we're still very much into the middle of this set of exams. The estimated retirement, and this is my estimate based on what CompTIA has done in the past, would put that retirement somewhere around May of 2024. As we get closer to what might be a new release date for a new set of exams, we will know more about what that retirement will really be. But as you can tell, since we're sitting here in 2022, you got plenty of time before you ever have to worry about Security Plus going away or doing something different. So that part's really great. That's one less thing we all have to worry about as we sit here today. Now, if you're watching this on a replay and it's March of 2024, you may want to go check the CompTIA website to see when they think this might be retiring, because you might not have enough time to study for this version of the exam. So another one that you should be familiar with. Also in the chat room, question, why you don't explain the CySA Plus course? Could not. I'm absolutely with you. I would love to be able to do a CySA Plus course, a Pen Test Plus course. I'd love to do a VMware course. I'd love to do an Amazon course. I'd love to do a Google course. Let's do a Microsoft. I have a huge list of courses that I would love to do. It's really a physics problem. It's really more about how much time do I have to build some videos, some course notes, some practice exams, put it all together as something that can really help you. Right now, we're in the process of updating our A+ course. When that's done, we got a little bit of time. So during that time frame, I have to figure out, should we do another exam? Should we do another course? What is that going to be? We don't know yet. We have no idea exactly what that will look like, but I would love to be able to do some other course. I don't know if it will be a security-related course. I don't know if it will be an operating system course. I don't know if it will be a networking course. I just don't know. I just don't have any idea. So that's why I always say, make sure you keep checking back. I'll probably be talking about it. As soon as I have something to announce, I'll announce that. Until that time, as I've mentioned before in other study groups, I wake up in the morning and I have a completely different perspective every morning on what I might do next. It changes all the time. It changes based on what people are telling me. It changes based on what I'm seeing on the internet. It changes based on trends that I'm seeing in the industry. It changes based on world events sometimes. So I never quite know exactly what it's going to be. Let's address exam questions and their complexity. So this is a study group. This is not designed to emulate or pretend to emulate, or the questions here are not written with the scope of trying to emulate what you would see on an actual exam. This is a study group that is really, the main objective of the questions I ask on here are to see if you understand some key pieces from the exam objectives, topics, ideas, security techniques, so that you have an understanding of those. Some of the questions I ask in these study groups do tend to be similar to things you might see on the exam, but that is just a coincidence. I don't write them that way because this is more of a casual learning experience as we go. It's not meant to test you on what the exam might be. Mainly because the book that has questions that are, I try to write with the same idea or feel or voice as the actual exam, is the practice exams book. So if you wanted to get a better feel for what actual exam questions feel like, this is what I tried to write to give you an idea, called something that you would feel like actual exam questions. Now, obviously, they are not actual exam questions. I wrote all of the questions in these books. They are all original, but they have a feel of questions you might get on your exam. That's why I always tell people that even if you got the question right, you look at a question on here, you think it's D, you flip over the answers, yep, it's D. Don't stop there. Read through the questions that are wrong, the answers that were wrong in the list, because the topics listed in the wrong answers could be something asked of you on the actual exam. So in reality, there's probably a lot more learning content in here than just the 90 questions on the exam. There's perhaps 4 times as much information because every single answer has some information about it. I give you at least some context with every single answer. So if you're looking for something that comes close to actual exam flavor, it's this one. Now, I have people that have talked to me after taking their exam. They've sent me some very angry messages that say, I bought your book. I went through every question. None of these questions showed up on the exam. I know, they don't, because that would be cheating. I'm not going to give you actual exam questions. These are questions I wrote, but they are very similar. They have the same feel. So I don't tout that the actual exam questions are in here. That there's a whole bunch of moral problems with that, much less illegal copyright issues. So these are my questions. I wrote them myself in a room in the darkness. I sit in here. When you're not here, this is where I am writing content. So that's it. I don't know if they were really being serious when they were angry about hey, this wasn't the actual questions, but I went along with it because that's just not something I can provide. That would not be appropriate anyway. Plus, you don't learn anything that way. How are you going to be successful in your career if you don't actually understand these concepts going into these exams? You know, exams are good. They are a good check along the way. They're a guidepost. They can tell you, I got this far with my personal knowledge. But they can also be very useful for your own personal understanding of this technology. Let me give you an example. I go back to a set of Microsoft exams. I have a big pack of certificates that I've gotten through the years. I must have 20 or 25 different industry certs that I've collected through the years. The list that I have, I took a Microsoft MCSE. For those of you familiar, back in the day, the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer exam was 6 different tests that you had to take about Microsoft Windows. And once you passed all 6 of those exams, you earned this MCSE certification. Very broad, very well-respected, very well-known set of certifications. At the time when I got my MCSE, I don't even want to say this, but I'm saying it anyway to make a point. The MCSE I got was for Windows NT. So this goes back a number of years. That was the first one I got. I got Microsoft certifications since that time, but the first one I got was for Windows NT. It is remarkable if you start looking at Windows today and how it operates. A lot of the basic architecture and functionality of Windows 11 and Windows Server 2022 are the same as what I learned with Windows NT. A lot of the skills I learned about Windows back in the day when dinosaurs ruled the earth, I can still apply to the current technologies. It was NT4. So it wasn't so bad. We're not going back to 3.5.1. It's not LAN Manager 2.0 for those of you keeping track. This was NT4. It's legitimately Windows. The key, though, with that is that what you're learning today about networks, what you're learning about security, you're learning about next generation firewalls, about these tools that we're using about Sniper and the Harvester and Autopsy and these things, you'll use that knowledge. Even if it's not about that specific version of that specific utility, you will use this knowledge throughout your entire career. So this is valuable stuff to know. I realize that the main purpose of what most people want out of this course is to earn their certification. And the course is written that way. The course is built to give you exactly what you need to know, to give you exactly the right depth of what you need to know, and to not bring into the equation things that aren't on the exam objectives. It really is a very, very focused course, and it's built to be that way. Some people like courses that go outside the scope. I totally get it. This would not be the course for you. I stay very tight to the objectives because that's what you're going to be tested on when you sit for the exam. So I tell people that if you're planning to get your Security Plus, that the important thing for you to think about is understanding these technologies and knowing what they are. Even things that aren't going to be on your exam, you'll still need to know because they're listed in the exam objective. So that's what I mean when I talk about finding some good Q&A. You really do have to look around to find something that's very focused, that stays specific to the objectives. Nothing in this book goes outside the objectives. It really is built for you to pass your exam. That's what this book is written for. That's all of my training materials are written specifically for that. Could we go outside the scope? We could. Heck, every topic that's in the exam objectives, we could spend days talking over. But the real key for anybody who's working through these is to get that certification, and that's what we're really focusing on. Other questions, let me mention Olawale in the chat room with a $5 super chat. Thank you for your super chat. They write, I attended last month's study group and proclaimed I would be certified before this month's study group. I took the exam on Sunday and passed. Thank you. Congratulations on your new exam, on your new Security Plus certification and passing the exam. And you're right. You said, I'm going to make it happen, and you made it happen. Sometimes it's that own drawing a line in the sand for yourself that gives you the motivation you need to get over that line. Congratulations on that. And thank you for the $5 super chat as well. We sure appreciate it. It helps keep the lights on. This is always good stories to hear too. I love to hear the stories about here's what I did, here's how I studied, here's the things I used, here's what I ended up doing on my exam. Everybody has a different story. They're all a little bit different. It's interesting to see how people are studying and the differences. Everybody has a different strategy. Everybody has a different idea of what they want to use and a different way of doing it because we all learn differently. So it's great to hear those different combinations coming through. And congratulations again on your Security Plus. Let's say in the chat room, there were a few other questions coming up before. Let me scroll up a bit. Question in the chat room. I will be starting a CCNA course next month. That's the Cisco Certified Network Administrator. Do you think it makes sense to simultaneously study for the CompTIA Network Plus? Wondering if I can somewhat kill two birds with one stone. You know, there's not that much overlap as you would think between the CCNA and the Network Plus. There's quite a bit. Do not get me wrong. They are very similar because we're talking about networking. But Network Plus is an entry-level certification. CCNA, decidedly not an entry-level certification. It's kind of the next level up, if you will. And a very common path is for people to take their Network Plus and then transition into CCNA. But if you're someone who you've already decided, I like networking, I like switches, I like routers, I want to learn how to build these, I want to learn how to design them, I want to learn how to troubleshoot them, I know I'm going to be working with Cisco equipment, I'm going to go get my CCNA, and I'm going to skip over the Network Plus. So all of the things that you would have learned on the Network Plus, you're now just going to have to learn it as part of your CCNA. So will CCNA take you a little bit longer? Yeah, it will, because you have to now learn the foundation that you can then apply some of these skills to when working at the command line of a switch, of a router, and working on the CCNA exam objectives. But it's not insurmountable, and people all the time skip over Network Plus and go straight to CCNA because they know they have a focus in network administration. Now, if you're somebody who's just trying to get a job in a help desk, CCNA might be overkill. It might be too much of a qualification. In fact, if You look at the job postings, see what the people in the help desk are asking for. Are they helping? Are they hoping for you to have Network Plus? Are they asking specifically for CCNA? You need to go through and figure out what they want. It's difficult. You could possibly walk into a help desk position, tell somebody, I don't have a Network Plus, I have the CCNA. They might decide not to hire you because you would be overqualified for that particular position. If they think that you're going to be in a help desk and resetting passwords and kind of learning the help desk way of troubleshooting, and you have already gone through the process of learning a next level up certification like CCNA, which is a very technically detailed certification. You're learning how to do things at the command line. You can build a configuration for a switch from scratch. You can build the setup for a router from scratch. You can connect them all together and troubleshoot the protocols over the network. They may think that hiring you for a help desk is well below your skill set. You're not going to be happy in that job, and you're going to leave in a month. Well, you're not a good fit. Maybe we're not going to hire you for that. When reality is you may not have any experience. Help desk may be the right role for you, but you've now told them information that might lead them to think that it's not a good fit for you. So even if you earn the CCNA and you don't currently have a job in technology, make sure you properly build your resume to match the job that you are applying for. Telling someone that you have a CCNA and what they really want on the job posting is a Network Plus could actually hurt you in the short run. And you end up not getting the job. So, or it might work the other way. You know, they might say, well, we wanted someone who was more network knowledgeable. So you'll have to feel that out in the interview. You have to figure out the details. From someone going into pen testing, is it better to have CCNA or Network Plus? If you're going into pen testing, your knowledge of networking is going to be much more than what Network Plus or CCNA would provide for you. So you're doing much higher level things. Pen testing is not an entry level security job. It's a job once you already know about operating systems, you know about Windows, you know about Linux, you know how it works on the inside. You understand the technologies that they are running on, how their kernels operate, and how the operation of the operating systems themselves with daemons and services and interactive and where it stores files. You already need to know that. You also need to know about networking. You need to understand how networks operate, how protocols operate, how switches, routers, how to design them, how redundancy operates, how you can run encrypted connections over wide area network links. You know, much more than what CCNA ever goes into. So if you're somebody, but you know that pen testing is something you're really interested in, then you should already work along the lines of being an expert in operating systems and in networks before you ever get to a point where you would be in the world of penetration testing. That's a set of knowledge and a set of skills for security that you've already built on a career of security before you're even into the pen testing side of things. So that's the real key, is knowing what you need as a foundation. And if you're ever wondering, go out to the Indeed, the LinkedIn jobs, or any of the dice.coms of the world and go look at some pen testing jobs that are out there. Just pick a city, find something for penetration testing, see what they ask for. See what number of years in the industry they would like you to have, what level of knowledge they would like you to have in operating systems, in networks, and they might even want some industry-specific security certifications that have an emphasis in penetration testing. So that's where we focus on. That's where I think is the important part. Back to what path would be good for software fuzzing? A similar path, probably more focused on application development. Software fuzzing isn't something we tend to do on the IT security side. That's more on the development side, or certainly the security part of development of that. This is one of the challenges that's one of the challenges I see with the Security Plus exam, is there are a lot of topics on Security Plus that focus on application development. But in fact, on the IT side, we don't do, any application development, nor do we want to. There's enough to learn just on the IT side. So for anything around the side of software fuzzing, on the development process of security with applications. You know, we see a little bit of that with some of the security technologies we implement, like the secure web gateways, for example, being able to monitor JSON transfers. But that's the extent of what we would do with application development. Knowing how they're working helps us protect the applications they're building. That's why I think that's in the exam. Makes sense to me anyway. Let's see what else we have here. Back to my practice tests, because we can't do enough about that. Do they tend to be more difficult than the actual exam? I've really tried to build these to have the same complexity and difficulty level as the actual Security Plus exam. So that helps a little bit. I've tried to make the questions the same style, the same difficulty, use the same type of questioning strategy that they use on the actual exam. I really have tried to build it out to be as similar as possible. So when you walk into the exam, you're not seeing a different language on the screen. I know you've been to these exams, you've heard stories about this, where people walk into an exam and they say, I tried to read those questions. I don't even know how these were written. It's as if somebody wrote it in English and then put it into Google Translate, translated it to another language, and then translated it back to English, and now I'm reading it. Now, I think that's a good argument. If you go back a number of years, there probably were some CompTIA exams that were a little bit like that. I think the exams today are quite good in how they present these questions to you. They've done a very good job of cleaning up and making the questions very obvious and very clear as to what they are asking. Even with the 601, if you go read some or watch some of the 501 study groups, and I don't recommend you do, but on the 501 study groups, I also had practice exams for 501. The practice exams for 501 were these enormous paragraphs. They were almost like a reading comprehension exam because the questions were 5 sentences and there's information in every single sentence, and the answers themselves were very long. Well, I think CompTIA figured it out, because with the 601 exam, the questions are much shorter. They're much more concise. They really get to the point very quickly. And instead of it being a reading exam, it really does focus more on what do you know with security, which I think we were all hoping for. I don't agree. In the chat room, Corey says, I've heard you can ignore 90% of the words in a CompTIA exam because it's useless. Well, it's not 90%. I mean, there were certainly things in a question on the exam that you may not use, but it's not like that on the exam now. Thankfully, it's not this 90%. I don't think it was ever 90%. That would be extreme. No one would take these exams. But they were very long questions in the previous 501 version. The 601 is still a tough exam. Do not get me wrong. But the questions themselves, like the one we saw today, do I still have that one up? Let's have a look at this exam question. So this exam question we looked at before, that's not the right camera. The exam question we looked at like before, let's break this out. A CySA would like to decrease response time when addressing security incidents. Sentence 1. Unfortunately, the company does not have the budget, hire additional security engineers. Sentence 2. And then lastly, which of the following would assist the CySA with this requirement? Sentence 3. That's probably the most common cadence style of exam that you might find. Some questions are a little longer. Some questions are shorter. They don't tend to have a lot of trivia on the exam. Questions tend to be scenario-based like this one, where here's the situation, here's what we're trying to do, which one of these would allow us to do that? You know, most of those are in that scenario. So I would think that that's what you focus on. Now, as long as you have good questions, though, like the ones we went through today, I did not write with the actual exam in mind. But some of the questions we went through today could possibly be an actual exam question because I now write these like they're normal. If you look at my pop quizzes and you look at the questions that I do in the study groups, you know, I've been writing questions every day for 7 or 8 years now. So you get to a point after a while where you get pretty good at picking out and emulating some of the things that you're seeing. And in my case, I'm trying to blend my knowledge of security with the style of how CompTIA wants you to learn that information about security so that you can properly take the exam. And that's why I built them like that. And that's why I really had to build all the questions from scratch. So everything that's in these books is questions, there we go, is questions that I've written from scratch with that in mind. And if it's not right, sometimes I'll tweak it. You know, every single question in the 601 book, some of these came from the 501 book, not a lot because the exams changed so much. But a lot of the questions that are here that came from the 501 are very different because the style is different. So I've had to change the style over time, just like CompTIA has changed the style over time. So that's a little bit too much inside baseball, I realize. I took you way into my brain, and that's just not good for anybody. But that's where that came from, and working through them. Let's see how we're doing with these. Any advice for getting studied up on the implementation domain? That is a crazy domain because it's not specific to IT. There's sort of a development side of it. Implementation is a challenge on the exam objectives. What I always recommend, especially with those sections, take the exam objectives, grab the first section of those. Why don't I bring them up on my screen? We'll have a look at them myself, except I can't find my Finder. As soon as I find the files myself, I will bring them up on my screen. Let's pull up the Security Plus exam objectives for the SY0-601. I think I have version 3 here, which is it's good enough for what we are doing. Let's have a look at this exam. We've got section 3, or domain 3 is the implementation domain. So let's step through the implementation domain and have a feel for what some of these topics are. Some of them are very IT-centric, but it starts going off the scope pretty quick. So here is, when I mentioned why these exam objectives are so valuable, this is why they are. So let's take the first section of Domain 3 implementation, section 3.1. Given a scenario, implement secure protocols. Those secure protocols would be the Domain Name System Security Extensions, or DNSSEC, SSH, Secure/Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extensions, or what we call SMIME, Secure Real-Time Transport Protocol, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or SSL, the File Transfer Protocol, Secure, the SSH File Transfer Protocol, the Simple Network Management Protocol. We're just going through them. There's huge amounts of data on here. That's just one section of Domain 3 and the topics you need to know. Now, the benefit, of course, is that if there is a secure protocol that is not on this list that you're seeing somewhere else, you don't have to worry about it. CompTIA only wants you to know these secure protocols, and they rarely, if ever, on the exam, go outside the scope of this list. That makes it very easy for studying because then you can start crossing some of these out. You can study everything you need to know on the DNSSEC. Once you understand that, it gets crossed off the list. Then we'll do SSH. Then we'll do SMIME. Then we'll do SRTP. And we'll just keep going through the list and making those happen. I think that's a great way to study for this exam because now you really are studying very specifically what's on this list. Now, those of you that read very well, I'm going to scroll up on this list because I'll get an email from someone right after we're done that says, you know, if you read through, look how much I'm scrolling. If you read through this list, it says the lists of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Okay, first, we've seen the list. It's pretty exhaustive. I don't know why they put that. It's a pretty exhaustive list. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objectives may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. It certainly could. If the lawyers got a hold of this and said, you know, don't tell people that it's just what's on these pages, we might ask something else from another topic. The reality, though, is they don't ask anything from other topics. They stay very tight on this list. CompTIA is constantly reviewing the content of our exams, updating test questions to be sure our exams are current and the security of the questions is protected. When necessary, we will publish updated exams based on testing exam objectives. Please know that all related exam preparation materials will still be valid. So they are playing both sides of the field here. They are saying, here's a list of everything you need to know, but we could ask you something else. The reality, though, they don't ask something else. They stay really, really close to this. So I think that's where you would really want to focus, is on this list. And here is the ultimate deciding factor in my mind. If you go through the exam objectives and you know every single bullet, you can explain every single one of these bullets to someone else. You can write those off. You can scratch through this list or copy over this list, and you know everything that is in this document, you're going to pass with no problem. Even if they use that piece of the beginning of this, they take advantage of that phrase that says, we could ask you anything, and we might on the exam. Even if they went outside the scope of this list and they went outside one or two questions, it wouldn't matter, because you still know all of the other topics that are from the exam objectives. This is really the key to passing or failing this exam, is knowing every single one of these bullets. This is an enormous exam. This is much larger than the 501 exam. It's much larger than A+, much larger than the individual A+ exams, much larger than Network Plus. It is extensive. We're only in section 3. Look how much I've been scrolling. We're only in section 3. We're going to keep going. More section 3. So more section 3. 3.7, 3.8, 3.9. Oh, finally, section 4. Still not done. 4.2, 4.3, 4.4. See what I mean? If you've never looked through this list, how could you not? You're going to be taking this exam. Finally, section 5, getting to that. And finally, we're done. We're into the acronym list they put on the end, on the back side of this, which is an okay list. It's not a bad list, but you should pretty much know the acronyms automatically as you start going through the exam. You're going to start to learn all of those. This is big. It's a big set of exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with them. You know, one of the things, I've had people come into my chat room on my website and they said, I took the exam this morning. They asked me things I was not expecting on this exam, and I didn't do well. And I said, well, don't violate the terms of your candidate agreement, but what was a topic that came up that you didn't expect to see? And they said, well, they asked me a question about risk appetite. I wasn't ready for that. How was I supposed to know that that would be on the exam? And then they asked me a question about risk awareness. How was I supposed to know that was going to be on the exam? And I, of course, asked the question and said, well, when you went through the exam objectives, it's on the objectives. Did you have a chance to kind of go through that section in 5.4 and learn about risk appetite and risk awareness and risk control assessment and those things? And they said, well, I didn't really read through the objectives because I just thought it was a very high-level overview of what I needed to know. They didn't even look at the document. They had no idea that the document itself has this level of detail on it. And if you're someone who's been in the industry for a while and you've taken Microsoft exams, you've taken Cisco exams, you've taken Google exams, you've taken VMware exams, you've taken Red Hat exams, none of their exam objectives look anything like this. They do not give you this level of detail. CompTIA is one of those rare occasions, one of those rare organizations that tells you exactly what you need to know. And if you study this exam objectives and you know every single bullet, you're going to crush it when you go take the exam. You will pass it so easily because you already know what's on the exam. So I know I say all the time in my study groups, you hear me say over and over, go download the exam objectives, professormesser.com/objectives. Go to Google, type CompTIA exam objectives. I'm really saying this because if you study from someone else's video course. You study from someone else's course notes. You study from someone else's practice exams. That's great, but you still need to know those objectives. Doesn't matter. It's the same no matter what resources you are using to study. At the very foundation of what we're doing, make sure you have those objectives. So that's why I'm really explaining to you. Now, if you know all the objectives, do you need anything else? Well, I guess not. If you're so knowledgeable in IT security that you can go through every section of this and know how to explain to someone else what all these things are, by the way, nobody does. Having worked in the IT security field for many years, nobody knows everything that's on this exam. Even if you've been in it for a long time, there's still sections of this you're going to have to really freshen up, brush up a little bit on some of these sections. Because if I looked at this with the knowledge that I have, yep, I know traceroute, I know NSLookup, yep, ipconfig, yep, nmap, yep, ping, hping. I haven't used that in a long time. That's what I'm going to have to try. I know netstat, I know netcat, I've run some IP scanners, I know ARP, I know route, I know curl. The harvester, I've seen the harvester, I've never used it. That's what I'm going to do. Sniper, never used it. Scanless, I saw someone using that once. I'm going to have to study up. DNS enum, Nessus I've used. Cuckoo I've not used. So already in this list, I knew 75% of the topics on here. But even someone in the middle of security, there's certain of these utilities that you may not have used before. So even after doing that, you're going to have to go through this and figure out what makes sense to you, what things you know. So that's the real key, figuring that out. On the exam itself, Trevor asks, what's the deal with the scoring? Boy, this is a really good question, actually, from Trevor Brill in the chat room. Just going to spell it out there. So if you look at the exam itself, you go to the exam objectives, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the study group, the passing score is a 750 on a scale from 100 to 900. So why isn't it just like a 650 on a scale of 800? I don't understand what they're doing. Why are they doing that? Or why isn't it 0 to 900? What is going on with this scoring that's here? We don't know. CompTIA does not share their philosophy around scoring their exams. It is proprietary. And if I had to take a guess, I don't know. I've never asked. I have never brought it up. But if I had to guess, I would say that I think what they're trying to do is make the scoring process as, if we can use the term security professionals, as obfuscated as possible. They are trying to make it so that you can't backwards engineer how they are scoring their exams. Because I'm assuming in their world of certification, of IT certifications, it's a pretty competitive world. You know, the big names, we've already talked about the big names today. CompTIA has great certifications, Cisco, Microsoft, VMware, Red Hat, all of these places you would go to get certifications. Google, there's new certs coming out all the time. So I think they use the scoring and the way they score it as first a way that they can customize or tweak questions based on how people are answering and can kind of adjust the scoring a bit on their side. But I think it's also to make it a little bit difficult to understand so that nobody can do it themselves, so that nobody can do their own CompTIA exams, if you will, and say, our exams are just as good as CompTIA. We use the same grading method. No, you don't, because nobody knows what the grading method is. See how that works? So it's not the case that if you write your name correctly, you get 100 points. You don't write your name on the exam anyway. But starting the exam, you start at 100, and every time you pass a question, every time you get a question right, or perhaps in some cases part of a question right, you get a certain number of points. And if you get to 750 points, you've passed the exam, which I'm assuming is really 650 points. and not 750 out of the 800 you would have to earn. That would be a very difficult exam. So it's really more like 650 out of 800, right? So is that the way it works? And that's why percentage doesn't work, because every exam's a little bit different. And they're constantly adjusting their exams to make sure that they are fair. So that's why we mentioned that. All right. A couple of really good questions in the chat room about some older exams, and I'm going to give you a very important thing to consider. Let me bring up a Google Sheet, and we're going to talk about the difference between the older and no longer given SY0-501 exam and the current SY0-601 exam. I don't usually mention this on the study groups anymore because it doesn't make sense to mention it anymore because the 501 is just not available. But I want to give you some stats on these. So let's break out these stats. On the SY0-501 exam, if you were to go through those exam objectives, the number of objectives that you would see on the 501 is 778 objectives. Effectively 778 bullets or sub-bullets that you would need to know. That's a lot of topics to know for any exam. That's just over the amount that are on a single Network Plus. So Network Plus in the 501, I think the Network Plus has just over 500 topics on the current Network Plus, and this has 778 on the 501. Then they introduced the 601. The 601 has 1,038 objectives. That is an enormous increase in the total amount of information you need to know. So instead of having to memorize almost 800 topics, now I have to memorize another 200 and something more. So that's a lot of, what I'm trying to get across to you is that's that's 2 Network Plus exams, effectively. That's a lot of content. And it's that's why it's such a big exam. That's why the course notes are huge. That's why there's so many videos, because it's a big exam. It's a lot of topics. Here's the thing, though, in the chat room, the question, I've got a book that's a 501 book. Can I just use my 501 book for the 601? Here's the problem. Of those 1,038 topics that are in the 601, the number of topics, the objectives that are not in the 501 is 529. More than half of this exam is brand new material. And let me tell you, I know it because I had to build new content for it. It took forever to create this course because it is 50.96% is brand new. This means if you have a 501 book and you walk into the 601 exam, the best you could possibly hope to do is to get a 50. Got to tell you, not going to pass the exam with a 50% score. So that's why I tell people that's an increase of 133%. It's a third larger. Half the content is brand new. That's not something you want to use. So if you have 501 books, throw them out. Put them away. Do not use them. If you have anything that says SY0-501, do not use them. Everything you're studying for should absolutely, strongly recommend. I insist that everything you use is written specifically for the SY0-601. That is the version of the exam. So is the cert specific on the course code? It is not. When you get your certification and it just says you're Security Plus certified, it doesn't say which version of the exam you took. You could have taken a version of the exam 10 years ago and simply been renewing your certification all this time. The person who took their Security Plus exam 10 years ago and renewed their certs every 3 years so that it remains current is just as Security Plus certified as someone who takes and passes their 601 exam today. And it's exactly the same cert. There's no versioning. There's no version number or exam number on the certification you get. It just says Security Plus. So it doesn't matter whether you took the 501, the 601, the 401, the 301, doesn't matter. You're Security Plus certified. In fact, once you get certified, the exam doesn't change at all. Exam doesn't matter. CompTIA could change the exam number every day with brand new objectives every day, and it wouldn't matter to you. You're already certified. So it doesn't matter what they do with the exams once you get certified. It only matters if you ever want to take that exam again for some reason, and you really shouldn't ever need to take the exam again. So that's the important part. Always keep your exams up to date, and you'll be fine. Yeah, there was a question that came up earlier about, is the test open book? Oh, no. Not unless the book is the list of pictures that are in your brain. That is the only book you have. That is the key. So, do I think the 501 was harder than the 601? The 501 and 601, if you go to take the exam, I think the exam questions, the difficulty of the exam questions is comparable between both of those. I think the difficulty level of the exam itself is pretty much the same between the 501 and 601. However, the amount of information you have to memorize is obviously 133% more for the 601 than it is the 501. So in some ways, it's more you have to learn, so it's a little bit harder to pack all that information into your brain. It takes longer to study for it. The 601 from that perspective has a longer study time, but once you get through the study time, I think the questions that are asked of you are comparable to the difficulty level of the 501. So I know that's a little bit of a nuance, and it sounds like I'm sort of playing sides here, but it's an important nuance. The difficulty of the exam is different than the amount of time it takes to study and get to that point. I just think it takes longer to study, but I think difficulty is about the level. On the exam itself, if you go to a testing center, they will give you a blank sheet of paper. Usually it's a laminated sheet of paper in a single page, and they give you what often is a badly tipped dry erase marker. Like if you tried to write with it, you're going to have to write in really big block letters, or you're never going to be able to read it later. It got to a point where they were giving me such bad dry erase markers at my local testing center that I would bring my own fine tip dry erase marker, and I would just clear it with the person at the front desk. Here's my dry erase marker. Can we use this? Or do you have one like this that we can use? And all the time they said, no, you can use your, let me look at it. There's nothing in it. There's nothing hidden. It's not making noises. Yes, it's a dry erase marker. You can use this. And so you can write very fine characters on that page. It's much easier to work with, especially if you're doing subnetting. It's very useful to have. And when you're done, you bring that dry erase marker back out with the page. They erase the page in front of you, put it back in the list, and you're not able to take that with you, obviously. Now, what's interesting is how that dry erase page is used in a testing center. The way it is supposed to work, the way it is written in the rules of the testing center, is you are only allowed to write on that page once the exam clock begins. And I'm not talking about the clock that happens at the beginning where you have 15 or 20 minutes to read through the candidate agreement. That's not the actual exam clock. Once you finish the candidate agreement, which is effectively a non-disclosure, you're saying, I'm not going to tell anybody what's on this exam, and you start the exam, boom, you've got 90 minutes, go. And that 90-minute clock starts. Technically speaking, that is the only time when you're able to start writing on that piece of paper. Now, what if people have told me, and what indeed have happened to myself, is they set up your candidate agreement, they get you seated in a chair, they make sure the mouse is working, they give you your piece of paper and your pen, and they leave the room and go, best of luck. And that's it. Well, many people start writing at that point. And I think although they are allowing it in the testing center for you to write at that point, the actual rules say that you're not allowed to do that. They say you really are only supposed to write on that page once the actual exam time starts. So if you're testing yourself, or you're trying to figure out what do I put on that paper, you may want to have that already figured out before you arrive so you can write it down very quickly in 2 minutes and then jump into the exam content just in case the clock is clicking at that time. If you are not taking it at a testing center, then you are taking it at home. Many of you may not even realize you can take these exams at home now. This is using technology from Pearson VUE called OnVUE. See, Pearson VUE, it's an online exam, so it's OnVUE. The OnVUE exam also allows you to use a whiteboard online, a digital whiteboard. So it's just text. It's just typing it down like you would type in notes in Evernote or notes in OneNote. So you might want to put in notes from here. So you're just typing on the keyboard, except you're not spelling things properly. This is where you would put things into this list. You would just type, and then later on the exam, if you ever want to go back to this, you can always go back to the whiteboard. It's not technically a whiteboard, is it? It's just more of a place to put notes that you type in. That's bothering me, so we're going to do that right there. So that's what the whiteboard is. If you want to practice on that, go to Pearson VUE's website. In fact, I think what I searched for was OnVUE, ONVUE, one word, OnVUE whiteboard. And you'll find this page, and you can start practicing yourself on what the whiteboard might be. Now, as people are mentioning, and I'm not sure why people sometimes get wrapped around this, is when you are in the exam, you cannot talk. If you are in a testing center, you cannot talk. If you're taking your exam at home, you cannot talk. It's a testing center. Your room in your home becomes the testing center. So no, you can't talk. You can't say things in the middle of your exam. You can't have headphones on. In the testing center, you cannot have headphones on when you're at home. So the same rules you have in a testing center still apply. In fact, it's probably more secure at home because they're watching you the whole time very closely, apparently. Testing centers also watch you the whole time. I don't know if you're aware. There's a camera up there. They have to have that. It's mandated by Pearson VUE. There's a list of requirements for testing centers. That's one of those requirements. So they're watching you the whole time anyway and listening in. So you can't cover at home. They go to a point where you can't even cover your mouth up. So if I was at home and doing this, I wonder what the answer to that question is. You're going to get a message on your screen that says, please remove your hand from in front of your face. They're not going to say that. It just comes up in a text box. Please stop talking. Don't move your mouth. Don't say things. You can't mouth things silently. No. You can't do that. You can't do it at a testing center, and you can't do it at home. You can't do anything that could be interpreted as you taking the questions and putting them into some other format. It's a security feature. It's to limit somebody from stealing the questions. That's what it's for. And it's the same whether you are at home or whether you're in a testing center because you're taking a test. So no, don't mouth things to yourself silently. Don't cover your mouth. Don't talk. Don't stand in front of the machine because you have your camera on the whole time. They are watching you the whole time. So you don't want to say to yourself, CySA would like to decrease the response time and address. You're going to get a message on your screen immediately saying, stop talking. And if it happens again, you'll get a message on your screen that says, you've continued to talk. We are now failing you. Your exam is over. Clunk, it's gone. So you will have your exam revoked and you will not pass. It's that simple. So if you're someone who you sometimes like to do this, or you sometimes like to do the mouth, if you're someone who does that, start practicing not doing that so much. What I recommend, and I think it's really the best answer, don't take your exam at home. Go to a testing center. Testing centers they're not much different, but they're a little bit better at making this happen. So take it at a testing center. I realize, though, many of you aren't in a place where you can go to a testing center. Maybe the testing center is an hour away from your house, and it's just not practical to drive all of that way to take an exam. Testing at home is much more convenient, no question. And as long as you understand the rules and you understand the limitations and you understand that a network outage might cause a problem or there might be software issues that would cause a problem, and you are already prepared for these contingencies, and it's not going to bother you. It's not going to affect your exam situation. It's not going to get you upset. Taking an exam at home is just fine. Why not? Of course, it's perfect for a situation like that. Why wouldn't you? But if you came to my office, and I was going to take an exam, I can't take an exam here. You can have one monitor running and connected. Everything else has to be powered off. You can't have anything in front of you. You can't have anything to write on. You can have, I think they allow you to have a glass of water in a clear glass. I think they allow that, something like that, along those lines. So that's why I always tell people, if you can go to a testing center where you don't have to set up the systems, you don't have to create this pristine environment, you don't have to deal with idiosyncrasies between proctors online, that you just want to walk in, take the exam, pass it, and walk out, go to a testing center. It's just so much easier. But if you spend a little bit of extra time, you understand what's expected taking it home. There's plenty of people that have taken their exam at home, had no problem, worked perfectly, got all the way through it, passed their exam, didn't have to leave their house. That's fantastic. That's what you should do. So just be ready to have that, and just make sure. There have been cases I have been involved with CompTIA where people have tried to cheat during their online exams and published about it. You know, I had to work with CompTIA to say, well, here's someone who they clearly cheated during their exam. And it was actually not part of my website. I found this on another website of what they did and let CompTIA know, and they took care of it. It's okay. That person no longer is certified, and they've been banned, and they removed the information from the internet, and those things happen. So they're very serious about this. You just have to be ready for whatever testing situation you find yourself in. Just prepare for it, and I think you're fine. Be able to do that. How much does it cost to take the exam for CompTIA? It depends on where you live. Different countries and different circumstances determine the final cost. For example, in the U.S. and Canada, there's a certain cost. There are discounts available, as already mentioned. You go to professormesser.com/vouchers for your discounted exam vouchers. But if you are a student, and I think this is in U.S. and Canada, if you're a student in North America, I don't want to speak too far out of turn, so it's either U.S. or U.S. and Canada, and you are in class, you're actively taking classes, you can get dramatically discounted vouchers, like 50% off, 50, half off, by going to the CompTIA academic store. And there is indeed, if you go to, why don't we do this since we're here, go to professormesser.com/vouchers, just so you can kind of see what this is about. That's not the right page. There it is. If you go to my vouchers page, you can see the very top, before you get into step one, picking a voucher, if you are a college student, you can purchase vouchers at the academic CompTIA store, and you follow that link to go to the academic store. And in this case, I get an ad to go to the academic store. The academic store allows you to get a single line item. You can buy one voucher. You are limited to buying 4 vouchers and 6 digital products in a 6-month period. And in your total lifetime, you may not buy more than 10 of these things total. You will be asked about what school you attend and what classes you're in. They use a third-party service to validate that you are an active student. And along those lines, some people will tell you, no, all you need is an EDU email address, you can get it. Well, actually, the academic EDU email domain is no longer needed for verification. It's no longer used. You don't even need the EDU email address anymore. They check it very carefully. So that is the academic store. The benefit, though, if we start looking at these things separately, if you were to get an A+ voucher from the academic store, this is a voucher that in the United States is $200 and something, I think. In the academic store, $109. So you can really save some money if you are a student, but you have to be a student for that. That is the CompTIA academic store. There's a link directly at the top of professormesser.com/vouchers. It's right here at the top Because the last thing I want to do is have you come to my site, purchase an A+ voucher for $215, and you could have paid $109. Oh, I don't want you doing that. I want you to go in the academic store to do that. So that's why I give you, if you hit that page, you should already know about that and going with those. So that's the real key. And the same thing applies for all of the vouchers. So all of the CompTIA store just covers the bases with those. I think you're okay. Do you buy a voucher if you fail, or is there a retake voucher? The vouchers that are available to me are not retake vouchers. You need a voucher each time you take the exam. If you go to the CompTIA website, they have vouchers that include a retake option. You pay extra for that, but you have to buy the voucher with some of their products. It's all bundled together. So it ends up you're not just buying the voucher, you're buying a voucher and some other things on the CompTIA website. The CompTIA is the only site that has a single voucher that can be used initially and for a retake, because CompTIA doesn't share those. That's the only place where you can get a voucher like that is on the CompTIA website. That's just sort of the world of vouchers, I guess. The retakes are interesting. Every time you retake the exam, you need a voucher. So that's the important thing to remember. If you end up taking the exam 5 times, you need 5 vouchers, or you need 2.5, or 2. I guess you need 3. One with a retake, another one with a retake, and then a third. See how that works? By that point, you're buying more than you need from CompTIA, because why would you buy the book twice, or why would you buy CompTIA's CertMaster Learn twice? You wouldn't. A single voucher would work for you. The retake policy is interesting since this sort of came up. If you have a look at the CompTIA website, they have a very specific policy for retaking the exam. If you fail your first attempt, there's no waiting period. You can immediately go take the second attempt of your exam. But if you don't pass the second time and you want to take the exam a third time, you're going to have to wait 14 calendar days until you can take the exam again. And then any subsequent take, you're going to have to wait another 14 days between each one of those. So for the 4th attempt, you have to wait 14 days. Then the 5th attempt, you're going to wait 14 days. So there you go. That's the real key. That's what you have to think about. But you need a separate voucher each time. You need a voucher for the first attempt, a voucher for the second attempt, a voucher for the third attempt, and so on. So there are no freebies. You do not get a second attempt for free ever, regardless, anywhere. So one thing on my website on the vouchers, unfortunately, and I mentioned this, is vouchers can only be used by individuals physically located in the United States, Canada, Puerto Rico, and Guam. This applies to both online and in-person exams. So unfortunately, the vouchers on my site are only good if you are in the U.S., Canada, Guam, Puerto Rico. That's it. So if you're in Caguas, if you can use these vouchers. If you're in Chicago, you can use these vouchers. If you're in Guam, you can use these vouchers. If you're in Ottawa, you can use these vouchers. If you're in London, UK, you cannot. So sorry. At least not right now. You know, part of the challenge with this is just it's an international monetary issue, is that selling vouchers for the UK requires that I sell them in pounds. If I sell them for the EU, I sell them in euros. If I sell them in Australia, I sell them in Australian dollars. So I'm not quite ready to roll anything like that out, because I have to buy them in those different currencies. And there are some challenges from a taxing and cost accounting perspective about doing that. It's not insurmountable. It's just something I have to set up before I can offer such a thing. I have to make sure everything is in place. My accountant's a little busy right now, because it's tax season. So we can't have a conversation about that until after April 18th. Then I can talk to my accountant again and say, I guess once he gets back from whatever vacation he takes, which he clearly needs after that point, we can have conversations later in the year about that. But I'm not sure how I would roll that out yet. This is why maybe I should just offer and just, if everything was in cryptocurrency, we could avoid this, but it's not. We have to deal with different currencies in different countries. And it just adds an extra layer of financial coordination on top of this. And like I said, it's not insurmountable. It's just something I need to really apply and set up. And I just haven't been in the case to do that quite yet, but I want to. It doesn't seem insurmountable. It seems like something I should be able to set up, but where do I get my account that will allow me? Do I have something that does a real-time transfer into dollars? And how is that taxed? You see where this is going. There's some challenges with that. So my recommendation, if you are in the EU, if you are in the UK, if you're in Australia, if you need I've had someone yesterday try to buy a voucher and they were in Japan, but they were a U.S. citizen stationed in Japan trying to take Security Plus. But you can't use these certs, these vouchers, if you are physically located in Japan. They won't work, even if you're online. Because there's obviously international currency taxing, the whole thing. Same reasons apply. Is the reason they don't do that. There's a whole revenue recognition and tax issues associated with that. So it is complicated. That's why there is cryptocurrency, right? That's why everybody thinks there's an enormous benefit if we can make something like that happen. There's just a lot of complexities around trying to make something like that happen. When you're talking about scaling it worldwide. We're all figuring this out as we go. How long does it usually take someone to prepare for Network Plus? Network Plus, A Plus, Security Plus are, interestingly enough, are all commonly around 2 to 3 months for each exam. So I think Network Plus, 2 to 3 months is reasonable. Security Plus, probably closer to 3 months is reasonable. For A plus each exam, probably 2 months for each exam. So a total of about 4 months for both of those exams. That's an average. Obviously, it depends on your personal knowledge and how quickly you can absorb this material. But on average, that's about what I see people doing for their time frames for these exams. But you look at me, I'm definitely not average. If I had to start studying today for Security Plus and I was starting from the point where most people are starting on their Security Plus exam, I think it would probably take me about 6 months, just because I have so many other things going on in my world that I'm kind of a slow gatherer of information. And I'm one of those weird people that wants to get through a certification and really understand every topic. So I want to really grab everything I can out of a cert. It's not always that way. I used to work as a systems engineer at Palo Alto Networks. We internally were required to be certified on our latest Palo Alto Networks engineer certifications. And that's when you don't have 6 months. They're like, you need to have this done next week. So go take the exam. Yeah, but I haven't studied. You work here as a systems engineer. If you can't pass the exam as an SE, maybe you're not qualified for your job. Ha, ha, ha. But they really meant it. And they weren't wrong. That's probably true. So let's go take the exam. But they did give us some study guides and here's topics. And I at least was able to go through and see if everything in there is something that I understood and recognized as what would be asked of me. That happens. So those are cases where, okay, I got to take an exam in a week. That's different. Mostly Security Plus, I like to take a long time. So it takes me 6 months. I think most people take about 2 to 3. If I had to average everything out, that's probably what it is. Do I have some of the performance-based questions somewhere? Well, there are performance-based questions in my book that you can find at professorbest.com/whatever. The practice exams do, although we did one today, I think it was pretty good. At the beginning of every study group, the first new question is a performance-based question. So you can go back 12 months, and every month is a new question with sometimes a new style. They might be matching, they might be fill in the blank, they might be command prompt, they might be the one today, which was you had to fill in a firewall rule. So you never know what you're going to get, but those are questions that really do come directly from the exam objectives, and I think those are pretty good representations of performance-based questions. I think CompTIA is trying to figure out what the best kind of performance-based question is, and I think we'll see those evolve as the years go on. In the meantime, though, I like what we've got, and I think the performance-based question we do on our study groups is a good place for you to start. Do I miss being a systems engineer? I do sometimes. It was such a good job. I was a systems engineer in one form or another for about 20 years in the industry. So I was had a territory. I would get up on Monday. I would travel. I would go do systems engineering things. I would come back home on a Friday. Loved it. What a great job. Met a lot of great people. Literally got a phone call from a customer I knew, this was 7-8 years ago now, back when I used to work there. Got a call from a customer they were asking about something else. They were trying to find out what would be the best way to do this. This wasn't about Security Plus or A+, although he was aware of what I had done since becoming a systems engineer, and he knew about ProfessorMesser.com, and he sort of kept up with me online. But he had a very specific kind of question, like, where should I go to find this information? And he just gave me a call, which was great. And I love hearing from the people I used to work with back in the day, and gave him some tips and ideas. And here's what I would do, and here's who I would ask, and here's where I would go for those types of things. So I miss that part of it sometimes, of meeting people, of walking through their data centers, of just hearing about the stories they had from the security perspective. And it was always fun because I had a next generation firewall to plug in. I had a next generation firewall before anybody had one. So we would bring this in, connect it to a live network, and the stories that I could tell you about the things that would pop up on the screen. It's everything you would think, from anything you could think of came up on that screen, would pop up on the screen. And there were times when we found things that were illegal. I mean, federal felony illegal. There are times when we found things that were inappropriate. There were times when we learned more about people than we really wanted to know about them. There were times when we would just find people that just never did any work. We would find stashes of files and data that were somehow being distributed on the internet that shouldn't be. It was remarkable what you could find. And it was those stories that kind of, from a security perspective, we are all expecting something like that. Part of the role that we have as IT security professionals is that sometimes we're going to come across information that is sensitive in nature, legally, morally. It's felonious. There's bad stuff you will run into as an IT person, and you have to be prepared for it. You have to know what to do when those situations happen. And I'm certain, although I was not present, I'm certain some of the things we discovered in those 1-hour meetings resulted in someone being fired at the very best, and often indicted at the worst. Those things, I know people and met with people who went to jail. Just to put that, went to federal prison, just to put that into some kind of perspective. You're in a meeting with someone, you come back months later, hey, what happened to that guy? Oh, he's in prison. So that happens. And in IT, especially IT security, that unfortunately, it's just a numbers game. Statistically, that will happen eventually. It doesn't happen every day, thankfully. Could not handle that. But it was a fun job. It was meeting great people. Not only the customers were nice, they were fun to talk to, and we always had a good time. People have this ridiculous type of perspective of IT security people or IT people in jail. They're the nerds. Well, I was working and I noticed that the bit had flipped, and we had went through the process of reconstructing that. But you always see that on the movies. You always see it in television. It's everywhere. The reality is it's people like you and me that just like to talk tech and what are we doing? Let's go get some lunch. What's good? Oh, there's a Mexican place. How about we go over and get some burgers? Just normal. It's normal people doing normal things with great stories. And we talk about what we would do outside of work and things we would work on. And you just meet just the greatest folks. And it was a lot of fun. Not only that, the people I worked with, when I was working at this next generation firewall company, at the time, next generation firewalls didn't exist. This was the very first one of these things. It was a technology no one had seen before. And they were hiring people that really knew their stuff. Somehow they hired me. I'm still not quite sure what happened there, but I'm very grateful. But what was awesome about that is I was working with people who were top notch in the industry. These were brilliant folks, not only in the corporate side that design these technologies, the development folks, the support teams, the logistics folks, everybody I worked with there was phenomenal. And it was great to have meetings with them when we would sit around and have internal SE training sessions. It was every synapse in your brain is firing. We're talking about really interesting technologies and things that we've seen and how we could implement this and how we could design it and what the disadvantages were and what the advantages were. It's fantastic. If you're ever in a case where you have a chance to do a job like that, absolutely go have a shot. It is unlike every other job you'll find in IT. It has its own set of challenges and its own idiosyncrasies, but incredibly gratifying, and you learn a lot. So I think that's what from an SE perspective, I know just asked a single question, but do you miss that? Sometimes I do. I love this more. I built this weird construction of systems and technologies to be able to create these training classes because I felt there was a gap in the industry. It was a gap on the internet that even today in certain areas has not quite been filled yet. So this is my passion. This is the thing I love doing the most, even more than systems engineering, or at least different than systems engineering. But it's something that if an opportunity came up, if I decided, well, I'm done with this, let's go do more in the industry, that's the first place I would look. Is there an SE job somewhere? They want somebody to go around and do SE stuff. I'm in because I loved it. It was just great. Could I give advice on where someone could buy equipment from surplus or liquidating shop to set up at home for lab study? Most of what you will find for labs, you can run virtually these days. You can run as a VM. You could run as a virtual device. Even next generation firewalls are virtualized these days. So you don't necessarily need physical equipment. In fact, if you're really interested in kind of getting things going for lab studies, it's not technically security related, but it will help you quite a bit, is go get a copy of Packet Tracer. We talked about CCNA and Cisco earlier. Cisco has an absolutely free virtualized network environment called Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer is remarkable in what it is able to do. It allows you to build, design, connect, freeze frame, and step through a virtualized environment. I'm going to log into my Cisco Packet Tracer account. If I can figure out what that is, I will do it. I think it's here. There's so many passwords. There's way too many passwords, everybody. What email address did I use? We'll try this one. And what password did I use? We'll try that one. And we'll see if it works. I'd love to show this to you. And it worked. No, I really don't believe that just happened. We're going to go with it. So here's Packet Tracer, blank slate. So Packet Tracer is there. This is Cisco's, this is their playground. You want a router? Let's put a router. Just drag it and drop it. There's my router. And just putting it on the screen is more than just having a router that you can work with. You're now able to do some things with this router. If I click on it, you can actually see, oh, that's what the router looks like, the front and the back. different modules that are inside of it. You can add different modules to it. We'll stick some in there. Oh, I've got it turned on. We've turned it off. What was I thinking? Well, while it's turned on, we can go right to the CLI of the router. You know, this is not a real router. This is all virtual. But if you were to look at a Cisco router, this is exactly what it looks like when it starts up. Would I like to enter the initial configuration dialog? Sure. Let's go through it. And now we can step through the basic management setup. What's the host name? Host name is router 1. Do we need a secret? Secret 1. Don't tell anybody. Enable password. Enable 1. Hey, what are you doing? Those are, now we're just setting up as if there was an actual router here. And once we build it, we could start setting it up and doing other things with it. Maybe I want a switch to go along with it. We got switches in here. I got insert in user devices. Maybe I want to put a PC over here and a PC over here. And I want to put 2 routers in between. And then with those routers, put another router. There's a 2911. We'll put another 2911. Let's put what other device we want to put in? Let's put a switch, because we got devices here. We're going to need a switch in the middle. Look how quickly I'm building these out. Now, could you imagine putting these in a rack where you have to physically put a router in, plug in a cable, figure out where we're going to plug in a cable somewhere else? Well, why don't we just plug in the cables here? I've got a connection, and we'll grab an Ethernet cable, and we'll click here and say start with fast Ethernet and plug it into this switch on fast Ethernet 10. Boom, they're connected. That's it. We're done. You know, we just connected those up. We didn't have to go hunt for a cable. We didn't have to wonder if it was working. I could build out a relatively complex network here and then start passing traffic between, because this PC that's here, I can go to the desktop of the computer, go to a terminal screen, not a terminal screen. I want the SSH, or at least a command prompt. There it is, command prompt. And you can do pings from here. And you can run trace routes. And you can see if you can actually connect across a network that's purely virtual. Now, this is, first, a lot of fun. And if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to run through a scenario of, you think this would work, let's plug it into this virtual world and see if it works. Now, Packet Tracer is free. It gets you through 99% of what you need to know for the CCNA. There's some features that aren't in here, that aren't available, but most everything is. I do have, I wonder if I have any of these other Packet Tracer networks around that I could pull up some data. I think I do. It saves them as a PKT. I think I built one that had a route loop in it. There it is. I just found the PKT and just loaded it up. So here's one I built before that has a laptop, a switch, a router, a switch, a router, a switch, a router, a switch, a laptop. And what I did, I built all of these out with configurations. They're all legitimate. They've all got IP addresses. And I changed one of these routers with different routing tables in them to create a loop. So you can watch it in real time. You could slow it down and watch the packets bounce back and forth when you create a router loop. And then you can fix it and then watch what happens with the routers. There's a lot of great labs that are out on the internets where you can download other Packet Tracer files that have challenges for you. So it says, fix this problem, or this user had an issue, go find the problem and fix it. It's Packet Tracer. It's from Cisco. That's where you find it, just on Cisco.com. Look for Cisco Packet Tracer. There you go. I've done the Googling for you. That is how you get that. I don't think there's a direct, easy link. What do you get when you type in Cisco Packet Tracer? The first thing on the list is Cisco Packet Tracer Network Simulation Tool. That's what you're looking for. And that will get you, what is it? NetAcad, which is Network Academy, networkacad.com/courses/packet-tracer. Sure, that sounds easy. Why are you making it so difficult? netacad/courses/packet-tracer. That's your link. So Lori's watching this. Lori, if you would put that into the YouTube video description, that would be Marvy. We'll make sure everybody's access. This runs on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. How you like that? They are ready for you. So there is a Linux tool like that. It's called Packet Tracer. Runs on Linux natively. I have found it runs pretty good on Linux. I used to run it exclusively on Linux, and it ran great. I actually didn't run any problems on Linux, maybe one or two here and there, but nothing of note. What wasn't available was a native macOS version. And now for those of you running macOS, because you are security professionals, there is a macOS, a native macOS version available. That's what you saw me running, was the macOS version on my screen. Can't really see those up at the top. They're really tiny, but there they are. See, it really is. What version am I running here? I'm probably one behind. I just updated this recently. It can't be that old, right? Running 8.0.0212. So it's probably 2021 EULA. So it's probably needs to be updated on my side. But I'm pretty sure we're running basically the latest stuff. Now, there are alternatives to this. People are mentioning this in the chat room. There's a full-blown version of this that really does use Cisco files. They're actual binary executable runtime iOS software packages that Cisco has. There's also third-party tools like GNS3 that are, for some reason, overly complex to set up, but they require that you have a legitimate license for the iOS code that's running in there. And it's sort of the problem is that if you're running Packet Tracer to learn this, then you probably don't have a Cisco device to pull iOS from. Otherwise, you would just use that Cisco device. So that's one of the reasons I don't generally point people towards GNS3. Plus, I find GNS3 is just too overly complex for what it does. I like something very simplified. I start Packet Tracer, I get a blank slate, I start building some networks, it works, period. There's no extra things I have to set up. There's no special libraries that have to be included. I don't need a legitimate copy of iOS anywhere. It just works. So that's why I generally emphasize, unless you're doing something well outside the scope of CCNA, Packet Tracer probably work fine for you. And it's a lot of fun, as I mentioned. Where can I get labs created with problems to troubleshoot? There's a number of options available out there. There's some people that just exclusively make labs and sell them. But there's other places where you can download sample labs. There's plenty of, just hunt for Packet Tracer sample labs. You'll find tons to be able to pull down and play around with. There's just not a worry there. You've got plenty that you can work through. I think that would help anyway as you start going through all of these. Oh man, I hit the wrong buttons on my screen. We'll get these working in a bit. I don't have a sample. I don't make the labs. Hey, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I should just make some labs for Packet Tracer. Not that we haven't thought of that one before either. That'd be a lot of fun. And I have done Cisco course notes before on previous Cisco versions, and Packet Tracer was a big part of that. In the past, I've had Cisco practice exams that were just online exams. Those included a lot of Packet Tracer because I built it in Packet Tracer to be able to create the output to look just like a Cisco router. And those are fun. Those are fun to be able to do that. Well, I realize we're way past our 1 hour after show at this point. I did a lot of talking. That's just how it goes for me. But I think you basically got the gist of some things that might help you get through Security Plus, some other exam types. Now you've got a whole world of Packet Tracer to go figure out. There's lots of things you're able to do. It makes for a fun lab, and it makes you more knowledgeable in networking in general. I think all of those will certainly help your process, especially in security, which has a huge networking component to it. The more you know about the network, the more you can make it secure. Same thing with operating systems. Spend a lot of time with Microsoft, spend a lot of time with Linux, spend a lot of time with networks, and you will be ready to go on the security side. Well, don't forget, we've got one of these Security Plus study groups every month. Make sure you check back with the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. And when you're not here watching something live, we'd love for you to join us over on Discord, where myself and many other people are there studying A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other courses as well. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. We'd love for you to check in there. Make sure you join our notification list for our study groups so that you know exactly when one of those is coming along. Or you can simply go to professormesser.com/calendar and add my Google Calendar to your Google Calendar, and then you'll automatically know when one of these are going to happen. Come back next week. We have an A+ study group on Tuesday and Thursday, then Network Plus the week after that, and Security Plus the week after that. So really only 3 more weeks before we do another Security Plus. We'd love you to show up for all of those. I've got all new questions every single month. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.